Morning, everybody. My name is Councillor James Pasternak, and I'm the Chair of North York Community Council, and will be chairing today's meeting. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'll call meeting 27 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. The public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I ask for everyone for their patience with any delays or technical issues. Clerk staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting North York Community Council's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Clerk's IT staff will be available to assist members with their devices. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to speak or ask questions of staff. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it's their turn to speak. When voting on an item or motion, I ask that members ensure that their video is turned on and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must still submit and approve your motions by email, and staff are available at nycc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we're meeting in different locations and meeting remotely, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse nations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item and nature of the interest. I do not see any hands go up. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on June the 23rd, 2020? I'll make a correction. September 13th, 2021. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So the clerk has advised that we have one additional item that was added to the agenda. It is from Councillor Cole regarding, I think it's a preliminary report. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Opposed? That is carried. So I know that...
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
Oh, yes. Councillor Cole.
Yes, the question I have to the chair is, when will we be allowed back into North York Community Council for an in-person live meeting?
Well, that's a very good question, and I just was speaking with the clerk about that. When I asked about this last, I think spring, I was told that the North York Community Council chamber was being used for contact tracing, so I went to take a look, and nobody was there. I took a look on several occasions, nobody was using it. So I'm of the view, although we have to work with everyone, that we should be back. North York Community Council, or the council chamber, is a large room where everyone can social distance, where members of the public can participate safely, and it's my position, it's my view that we should go back, but obviously it's not my decision alone, but I'm prepared to advocate for it if it's the will of committee.
I'd like to move a motion that we request to let us back to North York Community Council for our regular meetings. Since, as you said, Mr. Chairman, it is a very large room. It's a very small community council. And at least we should, I think, be on the record as requesting that they let us back. Whoever.
Okay, just a sec. Okay, so Councillor Cole, can you work with the clerk to draft something up and then I'll rule on it? I think Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong wanted to speak on that issue, and as well as...
Yeah, and I want to speak on that issue. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I would say this. I've reviewed, members of council have all received communications from the clerk's office about what the clerk and the city's position is with regard to meetings. I don't know if all members of council have read that, but that would be the starting point for having a discussion as opposed to simply moving a motion. And in the absence of that, I don't know, in the absence of that, I think it's incumbent upon us to ask the clerk if they're able to describe what the city's position is at the current time with regard to organizing meetings. It's not, simply a matter of just passing, moving a motion. There has to be some sort of intelligent discussion with understanding all the consequences on all the implications and what the citywide policies are.
And I'm with Denzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
I don't need to
Mr.
say
Deputy
anything
Mayor.
other than I agree with that.
Well, there hasn't been an intelligent discussion about letting us back.
Have you read the report? Have you read the material, Mike?
Well, when was it written?
It was
Okay.
sent to all councillors.
When?
Ask the clerk.
Yeah, you don't know when.
Do your
Okay.
homework.
Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't mean
well,
to.
you do your homework.
I've
When
read the
did you
report,
get the
Mike.
report?
I didn't, look, I didn't mean to open up a hornet's nest. It was brought up by Councillor Cole. I thought it was a worthy suggestion of discussion. I expressed my views that I think it is time to go back. But that being said, I said it was dependent on the views of others as well. I didn't say this is what we're going to do.
Mr. Chair, can we confirm with the clerk that members of council have received communications on this subject?
Yes, okay, we'll see if there's correspondence at hand, and I'll have it circulated to all members. Okay, well, I know that economic development,
Another point of order, Mr. Chair.
yes.
I have, my staff is preparing a walk-on motion, just requesting for an update on the city's rules in terms of displaying building permits in front of residential developments. So just to let you know that we're working on that motion to give to the clerk.
Okay, thank you for that heads up. It'll be the will of the committee on whether they want to add it to the agenda. Okay, well, why don't we go through non-timed items? I was just on the verge of saying that originally we'd promised economic development their 9:30 slot. They have requested we move that off to 10. So we have a little under 15 minutes. I think we have about 13 minutes to kind of run through the agenda. Maybe we can do some quick items. And then as promised, we will move it off to a presentation of economic development.
We could be finished by then, James.
I like the optimism. I'm a big fan of optimism. Okay, so if we're going to go to non-timed items, the first item is that doesn't have a speaker. It's actually, well, 27.9 preliminary report zoning bylaw application, 24 Ranley Avenue. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to move staff recommendations on this. Obviously, it's a preliminary report, but I do want to highlight to staff through a 30-second speech that it is very close, if not right beside a school, Bedford Park Public School, and I do hope that the staff include the TDSB, particularly on this one, because I know parents and the administration alike will be concerned about what's going up beside a school and the local trustees. So I just want to make sure they're intimately involved in the process, the local school trustee as well as the school administration and parent council. So I just want to highlight that they get special invitations to the process, particularly the public meeting. Thank you. I'm moving staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Staff recommendations moved on 27.9 preliminary report zoning bylaw amendment application 47 Ranley Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2710 has a speaker, so we'll hold that down. 2711 parking amendments Whitmore Avenue. Councillor Cole.
I'd like to move the staff report.
Okay, staff recommendations moved on 2711, parking amendments Whitmore Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Extension of parking permit hours, this is 2712, extension of parking permit hours Sudan Avenue. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved on 2712, extension of parking permit parking hours on Sudan Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 2713 Ernest Avenue traffic calming. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that I can move this, and while it's a communication from myself and not a staff report, it's based on work that was done with staff. It predates, it goes back to Dan Clement's time. We worked with the community pre-pandemic, and it didn't get finished, but the intention was to write a staff report with essentially these recommendations. You'll note that there's a staff-generated drawing of where the humps would go. It's because the work was that far along, having already worked with the community, and that's the case in both 13 and 14. So I'm hoping that I can count on the support of fellow councillors to proceed with it, since their asks basically got stalled by the pandemic.
Okay, I would have, rather than drag this out, I would just have a couple of questions for the mover. And just sort of glossed over it a little bit, but why isn't this coming back in a staff report with a completed study?
Well, they were midway through it. And in order to get that started back up again, we would have to go back to square one, go back and do the door-to-door and polling again and do an updated study. But in fact, I can tell you that anecdotally, the challenges still exist on these streets. These streets have become major shortcuts from Scarborough through to the 404, and from York Region through to getting a quick shortcut to Bayview. And so the drawings that you see and the community work that was done is based on work done by Mr. Clement 2 years ago. But then the implementation and bringing a report to council got stalled. The report never got written, essentially, because staff were, as you know, all deployed in different directions.
So I think there's two sets of surveys. One is to see whether there's local support. There's actually 3 steps. There's 2 sets of surveys, and then it has to be part of the budgetary process. Do you think you've met all those requirements?
Yes. The Pineway one, item number 14, is a perfect example of that. A poll was done, close but no cigar. And so we then went out and did community engagement. 880 cities came and did an actual pilot project to show what the street would be like if it had the traffic calming. And we polled people on site for a week. And the results were entirely different. People then understood what the traffic calming was and would do and what it would not obstruct. And then they were ready to go. And that was a month before lockdown. And then nothing more happened. And so in the ways that you do those 3 steps, we've pretty much done them. The Ernest Avenue poll, the surveying of the community, actually happened almost 4 years ago. And the result was positive, but we ended up going through delays and not being able to proceed. And that's why that drawing of where staff would recommend putting speed humps still exists to this day.
Okay.
Is that all the confidence left?
All right. Any other questions for the mover, or we can hold it down for staff? It's speed humps.
Yeah, could I hold it down? Because I have a huge concern with the impact on paramedics and fire trucks, and also pregnant women. There's all sorts of new research on this stuff. So I'd like to hold this down to ask staff questions.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, we're going to hold down
So,
item 13.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I just want to do a point of order since we're holding it down. It was my intention to quick release it. If we're now going to consider it as an item, I hope I will still be allowed to speak to it because we've had sort of an awkward thing where I tried to quick release it. I've now answered your questions. I hope I'll be able to speak to the situations.
Yes, you will be. The only thing we've used up
Thank
is
you.
questions for the mover, which I've used up
Okay, thank you.
I've used up my allocation.
Okay, thank you.
2714 Pineway Boulevard traffic calming. Once again, Councillor Carroll.
Answering your questions, Mr. Speaker, I was really speaking to both these items because they're very similar situations.
Okay, does anyone want to hold it down or move it now? It sounds like they're very similar.
Yes, I was assuming that Councillor Robinson would want to hold them both since we were sort of talking about both.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I have questions of staff.
Okay,
Sure.
so
Okay,
they're both held. So we can go to untimed items with speakers if that's the will of committee. I'd like to go back up. Oh, wait a minute. We can do Councillor Cole's walk-on item because I assume it's not timed. Councillor Cole, I believe it's 3280 Dufferin Street. It's rare we get a walk-on item like this that stretches 24 pages, but here we go.
Yes, what it is that the last committee of council, North York Community Council, asked for the report on this development to be delayed until I received a community and facilities report. So that community and facilities report has been included now. As a result, I've asked for the item to be put back on the agenda so that we can proceed with a public meeting on the development application. So the applicant hired the Goldberg team to do this comprehensive community facilities report. I don't know why these reports aren't included in all development applications, but I think they'd be quite helpful because we've got so many developments occurring in certain neighborhoods, and there's no impact analysis of the development and the cumulative effect of other developments on the community and the services that would be needed to house the existing community plus the new developments that are coming. And in this case here, there's over 11,000. This is part of 11,000 new units coming into this community. So the report was comprehensive. It was very useful. And I certainly appreciate it being made available so quickly. Again, at the cost of the applicant. I just wanted to move ahead with the public meeting. And then, so that's why this is a walk-on item at this point. So I'd like to basically proceed with the process of calling a public meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other speakers on the item? It's just a preliminary.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's Councillor Carroll. I'm really sorry. I was listening to Councillor's comments, but I actually couldn't see it because I couldn't get into my CMP until this very second. So I'm wondering if I could just take a quick look at the recommendations and then I'll probably quick release it if no one else has questions.
So would you like to hold it down?
Yeah, unless others have questions to ask and that would give me the time to read it.
Okay, why don't we hold the item down? I'm obviously no fan of 24-page walk-on items, although I must admit it is just a preliminary report. asking staff to schedule a community consultation, which isn't the end of the earth. So why don't we hold the item down, and then Councillor Carroll, when you feel comfortable with it.
Mr. Chair, I've just seen the recommendations, and I now understand that wasn't clear to me during the remarks, but I now see the recommendation. So I can release it. I'm fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Okay, so unless there's any other speakers or questions for staff, Councillor Cole has moved the staff recommendations to commence community consultation on this application. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, why don't we go back up to untimed item 27.8, final report, part lot control exemption application 1202 to 1204 Avenue Road. I do have a speaker. Is Stephanie Mativa on the line? And let's determine whether she's the applicant or the applicant's representative.
To the chair. One moment, please. To the chair, that speaker was connected prior to the meeting, but I no longer see them on the attendee list. They are no longer connected.
All right. Okay. Let's hold the item down for a few minutes because I'd like to go to our economic development presentation. Do we have economic development on the line?
Through you, it's Clarissa Deno from Economic Development. I'm just waiting on Pat Tobin and Tobias Novogrodsky. They're coming out of a budget review. They should be here any minute.
Okay, let's go to 2710. Deputy Mayor Min Wong, information report, zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision applications 1 to 3 Congo Gate, 7 to 12 Congo Gate. We do have a speaker on the item. Is Jeff Hedges on the line?
To the chair, that speaker is connected. I am now unmuting their mic.
Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you very much, Mr. Hedges. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, council members and city staff. My name is Jeff Hedges. I am the president of MTCC 638, also known as Highgate. Our comments are on focused area study. In our opinion, the proposed development, which has been submitted by the developers, is presumptive and an end run around city planning objectives. We applaud and welcome the recommendations of NYCC to complete a focused area study and to extend the boundary of the study to include 197, 205, and 215 Winford Drive before making any recommendations on the zoning proposals. Regarding lack of community services and amenities, the proposed developments do not include much needed community services and recreational facilities to support such a large increase in population. Population will go from 8,800 to 22,100 for this area. Regarding the comparison of land densities, the Don Mills and Eglinton secondary plan indicates the highest density of 4.8 FSI, which is located at its closest corner to the LRT. The proposed density figures for 175 Winford Drive and Concord Place and Gate are 7.79 and 9.95 respectively, with the latter proposal to be over 530 meters from the LRT station at its closest point. This translates to a population of approximately 10,000 for the Celestica site on 60 acres of land versus 9,700 for the Concord Place and Gate development proposal on only 7 acres, believe it or not. Comments regarding provincial requirements for transit stops. The present population in this neighborhood may already be sufficient to satisfy the provincial requirements within 800 meters of the Winford LRT, because 75% of the land within that area is not suitable for development. This includes Flemington Park Golf Course, the Don River Ravine, the Don Valley Parkway, and the CPR right-of-way. Regarding neighborhood safety issues, the planned neighborhoods as proposed will propose dangerous safety issues for emergency vehicles in general and monumental problems should there be a reason for evacuation, as the only main egress and access to the area is via Winford Drive. Regarding elimination of award-winning commercial spaces, the elimination of 550 square feet of commercial office space and 2,500 jobs to make way for a crowded residential property or properties seems ill-advised, to say the least. For decades, the residential neighborhood has coexisted congenially with commercial tenants and owners. Regarding current and future traffic conditions, traffic in the area is completely or is congested currently. This can be observed by visiting the area in the morning or evening commute times. The city, in our opinion, should commission their own traffic study rather than relying on the developer's methodology. Regarding commuting or shopping, there is limited reachable on foot or by bicycle or retail, you can't get there. As the development proposals include very limited parking, it presumes future residents will be commuting or shopping on foot, by bicycle, or on public transport. The Eglinton Crosstown lane design has bike lanes, not raised or divided by a physical barrier. And there are no immediate plans to add lanes from Flemington Park to Winford to our neighborhood and to connect to Eglinton. And also we need connection on Winford to the Don Valley, the Don Mills Road. Bicycling, in our opinion, is a life-threatening experience and not one that current residents use, let alone future residents. The municipal, regarding parkland declaration, the municipal bylaw or parkland dedication does not differentiate residential development in a housing development and high-rise or condominium developments. As a result, developers are taking advantage of this omission as a loophole to deny the city and the neighborhood their fair and equitable share of parkland space. And the large number of children who may...
If you could wrap up, please. Can't hear you. Councillors, we've had a bit of a malfunction here. We cannot hear you.
Hello, this is the host. Hello, this is the host to Councillor Cole. Can you hear me? Yes, you're waving, so I'm assuming you can. Okay, thank you. Councillor Robinson, if you are available, could you unmute and let us know if you can hear us without issue, please?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Thank you.
I think we have enough to continue. Hello, everybody. Sorry about that interruption, but we're back online. We were listening to Jeff Hedges, I believe, when we had our technical problem. Mr. Hedges, are you still on the line? No? So I guess questions for the deputant are a little tricky. Councillor Robinson, I believe this is...
We passed that point.
Oh, sorry. Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, this is your item? So questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, I was in the middle of asking a question of staff, but as it happens, during the recess, I was able to have a talk to the local councillor, and I had a better look at the report, and it answers my question. So I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I must admit, I did see you speaking, but I didn't hear a word. And while my wife wants me to get my hearing checked, I am pretty sure that was the audio problem that we had. Any other questions?
We were very concerned when you disappeared on us, Mr. Chair. It's very unlike you.
Yes, no, I appreciate the concern. Any questions for staff on the item?
I have a question.
Okay, Councillor Cole?
Yeah, Mr. Hedges raised a point that is raised by a great number of people in the public about these development applications. He said, reference to the traffic study that's done and paid for by the applicant, and how can we be assured that this is an objective study that we get when the applicant is paying for it? Maybe staff could give us an explanation to Mr. Hedges' question.
So through you, Mr. Chair, all applications come in with various reports: transportation reports, urban forestry reports, engineering reports, stormwater management reports. All these reports are sent to our respective departments, and those are reviewed by our staff. It's not a report that's simply submitted and we just accept the report. They are reviewed by staff, and many times we don't agree with the information that comes in, and there's a back and forth requirements for more information. So they're not just accepted. There's a point where staff will agree or not agree with the information in those reports, but it's not just a flat out report that's submitted and we just accept it.
Okay, thank you for that concise explanation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff on item 2710, 1 to 3 Concord Gate and 10 to 12 Concord Place? No? Any speakers on the item? Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank the Mr. Hedges for showing up. This community's doing a lot of work on this project, and I can understand why, so thank you. But this report is actually, it's actually really focused because some members of the community wanted to include at the bottom end of Winford, a development called the Palisades, and the report says that there's not going to be any more development on the Palisades, so it doesn't need to be included in the focused areas study. And that was all they were asked to provide, was an information report. So I'm happy to move the staff recommendations.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Staff recommendations moved. Any other speakers on the item? No? Okay, staff recommendations moved on item 2710, 1 to 3 Concord Gate and 10 to 12 Concord Place. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I have one very brief announcement. It's been brought to my attention that Bruce Clayton, who is in transportation, has been in traffic operations for 32 years. and he is retiring. And on behalf of North York Community Council, I wanted to thank him very much for his years of service at the City of Toronto, for working with elected officials and other city staff to keep our roads safe, to protect pedestrians, to keep traffic flow, and to make it in general a Vision Zero city. So, Bruce, I wish you all the best in what you plan for retirement. Many people who are retired tell me that they're busier than they've ever been before. So I don't know whether that will be your situation, but I wish you all the best, and I thank you so much for your years of service.
Sir, where do I find the Farzana
in North York
discussion on FGM? Is that a good Farzana?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yes, Councillor Cole, you have the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to thank Bruce for all his professionalism and dedication and understanding in his years at the city. And it certainly has been my pleasure to work with Bruce lately with the project we did at Lawrence Heights. Canada's largest public housing development with over 100 acres. And we undertook traffic calming with some very robust measures there in Lawrence Heights to try and deal with the drive-by shooters there. I want to thank Bruce for taking that on and helping deliver more safety through traffic calming in the Lawrence Heights community. All the best to you, and I hope that Chairman Pasternak makes good on the custom of the chairman passing on a memento of your years from the chairman of North York Community Council. So I would anticipate that wonderful memento from Chairman Pasternak. Thank you, Bruce.
And I'd also like to thank Bruce for he's so easy to work with and great problem solving skills. Really sorry to see you go, Bruce. And on behalf of Councillor Cole and myself, you're much too young to be retiring.
Thank you, Councillor.
Great. Well, thank you, Bruce, and thank you, councillors, for those gracious comments. It's appreciated. If we have economic development on the line, I know they've been waiting patiently for a month, so I'd like to switch to their presentation, which was actually the 9:30 time. Oh, there we go. Okay, we have the presentation on the line. So I'll turn it over to, is it Cheryl?
Through you as Chairman, Councillor Pasternak, to the committee, it's Pat Tobin, Director of Arts and Culture Services for EDC, filling in for Cheryl Blackman, who's doing some interviews today. I'm joined by my colleague Tobias Novogrodsky as the Interim Director for Business Growth Services. Thanks a lot for entertaining us here today. We've got a deck, 16 slides. We'll move through briskly, take about 10 minutes of your time. The intention here is just to provide you an update on EDC's work in the context of recovery and zeroing in on the wards of North York to talk about some specific initiatives, leaving some time to field your questions at the end. So my colleague Larissa Deneau is driving the slides, and I'll ask if she could move forward to slide number 2.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Welcome. I budgeted 10 minutes, but let's see how it goes.
Right. So as you see here, we're just going to cover 4
to
quick
Pat
sections.
Tobin. Sorry, this is the host. I apologize for the interruption. To Larissa, who was displaying the slides, if you could please click on display settings and then switch view, as we're currently getting your presenter view rather than, yes, select that, please. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, clerks.
Sorry, and
Sorry, Pat, one more interruption. I wonder if I could ask clerks, on my screen, there's a sort of gray square blotting something out. Is that possible to be removed?
Well, there you go. And the landscape is fully revealed now. We were blocking out Scarborough, I think, there for a little bit. So I'd like to thank the committee chairman for your time. Again, quick overview of EDC, what we do and why, talk about the strategic directions for the division, drill down into some key initiatives, and then finally we'll close on priorities for 22 and beyond. If I could have the next slide, please. So EDC is comprised of 5 business units. Business Growth Services, which is the economic development arm, headed up by, as noted, Tobias Novogrodsky, who'll chime in here soon. Film and Entertainment Industries, headed up by Marguerite Piggott, which supports the creative industries in Toronto, as well as tourism and other adjacent sectors. I have Arts and Culture Services, which is effectively the not-for-profit cultural sector. And we have Joanne Pinn, who heads up Museums and Heritage Services, with such sites operated as Gibson House in North York. And finally, we have a section that enables all of this work, program support, that does a lot of our corporate work, to include finance and human resources. If I could ask Larissa to advance the slides. In terms of our foundations, EDC operates from 2 primary strategic drivers. The first is the City of Toronto Corporate Strategic Plan, and the second is EDC's divisional strategy, which was struck in 2018, pre-pandemic, and spans 2022. We'll be working to update that planning document, the second of those 2, over the course of the coming year. But as you'll see in the remainder of the presentation, the themes outlined for the division in 2018 continue to hold up as priorities as the city moves into pandemic recovery efforts. Finally, over the course of 20 and 21, EDC worked very closely with the Toronto Office of Rebuild and Recovery, and also Deputy Mayor Thompson's Building Back Stronger report, and those documents continue to inform the work that we'll be undertaking through 21 and 22. If I could ask for the next slide, please. This slide just shows how EDC relates to the Invest in People and Neighborhoods pillar of the City of Toronto's corporate plan, and how, as broken out against our goals, we expand this to encompass inclusion and equity, talented innovation, space and access, and operational excellence. These pillars map very, very closely onto the Building Back Stronger report. If I could ask Larissa to advance to the next slide. As a through line to all of our work, and represented in the first of the 4 pillars we just noted, EDC has struck a very comprehensive equity plan, which includes 7 goals and 38 actions. I won't go into depth on all of these, but leave you with 2 points. One, equity, and as Tobias will speak to, inclusive economic growth are key factors for us. And also it animates everything that we do as we do recovery planning. This includes, as you'll hear later, work on workforce development to ensure that where we are seeing a rebound in the labor market, we are able to ensure that Torontonians in every area of the city and from every cultural community have access to such opportunities. That we look at the provision of city space and space enabled by the city in the creative and business sectors as equitable, and you certainly have seen this work as a feature of, for example, Little Jamaica. And finally, under our pillar of operational excellence, ensuring that we are reaching all Torontonians and removing any barriers to access the EDC services and funding. If I could ask Larissa to move to the next slide, which is a summary of the Building Back Stronger report, again, headed up by Deputy Mayor Thompson and Blake Goldring. So this report was adopted by council and includes the pillars that you see here: economic recovery, anti-racism and inclusion, workforce and talent, and arts and culture. And while perhaps they differ in the ordering, I think you'll notice a very close alignment with both EDC's 2018 divisional strategy, as well as work that we've undertaken toward and after in terms of Toronto's economic recovery. At a broad level, we are using the tools available to us as a division, informed by Building Back Stronger report recommendations, to continue work to help businesses reopen, expand and thrive, while also assisting them in safeguarding their operations for evolving public health requirements. We are also developing specific interventions to make meaningful structural change and ensure that communities who perhaps do not share equally in our division's services and programs for economic development do so now, with a focus on Black, Indigenous, and other equity deserving groups. We are also developing collaborative approaches, and here this means other city divisions such as Toronto Employment and Social Services, but also partnerships with the federal and provincial government, as well as not-for-profit organizations, to accelerate workforce development in high-growth sectors as we rebound from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, we are carrying a significant focus to expanding the access to space, grants, and services for cultural communities outside the core, and there will be further announcements on this in the coming months. If I could ask Larissa to advance the slides, thank you. We don't need to get into great depth here how the impact, economic impacts, and social impacts of the pandemic have affected groups that were previously structurally separated from resources, be those economic development or cultural. The compounded impacts there are very significant for communities outside the core, communities of color, communities who are characterized by income precarity and exposure to the gig economy. Restaurants, personal care services, and other small retail businesses have been particularly hard hit, while we have seen lesser impacts on such sectors as film, where COVID protocols have really helped Toronto's film industry hold its market share and poised to even accelerate that growth with new facilities coming online in the near future, including North York. While within the cultural sector, we have also seen key elements such as live music venues, particularly where we are approaching about 20 live music venues lost, continuing to see impacts first to close, likely last to reopen, and probably not returning to full pre-pandemic levels of business for a couple of years, given signals of consumer confidence and the persistence of public health requirements. Moving then, Larissa, to the next slide. We did want to work through some specific initiatives that EDC is now operating in North York. So Larissa, if we could go to this slide for arts and culture services. Where we work very closely with North York Arts as a local arts service organization and our anchor for cultural development outside the core and in North York. They have received an increase in funding over the last few years to include becoming a core partner for the delivery of projects, and we'll look to expand that relationship. Cultural Hotspot continues to celebrate arts and community culture with 6 projects in North York currently. We are also notably heavily involved in North York with Artworks TO, Toronto's Year of Public Art. Only 2 of 6 community hubs are located in North York, and we were happy to welcome Councillor Pasternak to the opening of the Downsview Hub, as well as Councillor Carroll to the hub in her ward in Bayview Village. I'll stop there, perhaps with a note on 2 other significant North York initiatives. One heavily involved is EDC in the development of the Jane Finch Community Hub and Center for the Arts at 2050 Finch Avenue West. That work will continue in really close collaboration with the community and a broad group of staff across divisions. And as a note, we are also continuing to work closely with the Office of Councillor John Fillion with respect to a monument that can mark the tragedy in Willowdale at an appropriate point once capital planning is fully understood and any implications for a permanent memorial. Well, I'll turn now to Tobias Novogrodsky as the Interim Director for Business Growth Services.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat. And through the chair, this slide illustrates some of the projects that the Business Growth Services section within EDC is focused on in North York at this time. Beginning with the distribution of rapid testing kits. That's an initiative that the city has undertaken in partnership with the Toronto Region Board of Trade since earlier this summer, since mid-June. And the North York Civic Center is one of the 4 distribution sites for these important testing kits that are enabling small and medium-sized businesses to test their employees and to support safe reopening. Out of that North York Center distribution site, we've already distributed, as of just about a week ago, 186,000 tests that are being used by 21,000 employees, and that's serving about 1,200 businesses. So it's an important contribution to assisting businesses to safely reopen. Also noted on this slide are ongoing supports to BIAs in the area, Duke Heights, Emery Village, and others. Our staff are also involved in supporting the city planning-led municipal comprehensive review process with a view to preservation and protection of employment lands. That's an important initiative that's underway. Another project of note here is the Food Incubator Tenancy Program, also referred to as the North York Food Hall, which is providing infrastructure and training to allow startup food entrepreneurs a chance to begin a new and innovative food service business of their own. So that's an exciting initiative. This group also supports ongoing business development and expansion activities. 2 significant developments, which will be coming on stream over the next little while, include the Sanofi B200 vaccine manufacturing facility in Ward 6. It's a 200,000 square foot facility, 300 jobs, and the Technion new manufacturing office facility, also in Ward 6, 220 jobs estimated with that development. We are gearing up to provide support for the employment uses and reuses of the Downsview lands, a critical area in North York and critical to the future economy and community of our city. And another key initiative, again, with city planning is the Jane Finch initiative to develop an integrated plan for Jane Finch, which advances social equity, economic inclusion for both current and future residents. So those are a couple initiatives that we wanted to speak to here. I'll turn it back to Pat. And next slide, please, Larissa.
Good, thanks, Tobias. I'll pick up on Tobias's point there with respect to Downsview. As noted, Toronto's film sector has fared well in terms of the industry protocols that have made us a very competitive jurisdiction and held our own with respect to market share. We'll look to build that market share significantly with the expansion of studio capacity to include work at Downsview to intensify a creative cluster there, and more to come on that work. In parallel, a big priority for film and entertainment industries will be to ensure that we can predictably and reliably bring the workforce online as studio capacity expands by 62% over the next 5 years. That has included partnerships with the federal and provincial governments with respect to working closely with the unions to develop youth, principally in Toronto, to access these well-paying, highly unionized jobs as a port of entry onto careers in Toronto's fast-growing media sector. I'll note also for Marguerite Pigott that Show Love TO has been very active in North York across all of its activations. Stroll TO has provided self-guided walking tours in each of the 25 wards for the city, to include those of North York. Hearts have been deployed in collaboration with Tabia, creating Instagrammable moments for Torontonians revisiting the public realm in their neighborhoods. Big Art TO has deployed large-scale digital art projections with a focus inside the core to include North Park. I'll turn next, please, Larissa, to museums and heritage services. And we'll look to bring this to a conclusion, leave time for questions. Gibson House, our anchor in North York, has launched its summer programs with Camp TO. We are undertaking a number of capital projects as well over the course of the next 2 years to include restoring John Bales House in Earl Bales Park, which may well be the oldest building in Toronto. We are working at the Canadian Film Centre site, as well as additional work on Gibson House, and with the Office of Councillor Fillion on future plans for the Dempsey store in Willowdale. We are also at Montgomery's Inn launching an initiative under the banner of Awakenings to tell untold stories of Toronto's history through interactive digital activations. I'll now throw it back to Tobias to pick up with Cafe Tio.
Thank you, Pat, and through the chair. So EDC has been actively working with the city's transportation division to help deliver the expanded Cafe Tio program this season. Of the 1,213 businesses that are participating in Cafe Tio this summer, 112 are within the North York Community Council area, including and most prominently in wards 18, 15, and 8. And that support has taken a number of different kind of streams. There's been enhanced communication and outreach efforts. There's been promotion of the program through city newsletter and social distribution channels. We've also been making an effort to try to raise awareness of a related and really important opportunity to expand patios on private property. That's through council's sanctioning of a temporary use bylaw for patios on private property. We have less data about that because businesses that are taking advantage of that opportunity don't necessarily need to register with the city that they're doing so. But we do have anecdotal evidence to suggest that take-up of private patios is also increasing. And we've been focused as well on providing additional supports to councillors so that you can communicate with your constituents about this important program. We've hosted webinars for restaurant and bar operators, and conscious of the fact that the space is one thing, but the equipment needed to operate a patio also represents a challenge and a cost for some businesses. We've made efforts to partner with other organizations to provide other patio furniture donations, sponsorships, or discounts on the rental of patio equipment, so additional businesses can participate. And next slide, please. And this will be the last slide. Just looking ahead to 2022 priorities, EDC will continue its work to ensure that Toronto is and remains a place where businesses and culture can thrive, but with a more intentional focus on all communities and on inclusive economic development. So there is that focus around advancing inclusive business and cultural recovery efforts. We'll be looking to expand place-based community economic development projects and partnerships. We'll be undertaking grant reform of the various grant streams which EDC operates to ensure that public funding, city funding, is more equitably distributed to those in business and cultural sectors with the greatest need. We will continue to advocate for enhanced support from other orders of government for business and cultural sector recovery. As I think folks know, the two major federal wage and rent subsidy programs that have been absolutely instrumental to assisting businesses through this hard period are scheduled to end this month, at the end of the month. There could be extensions, but we'll need to wait and see. And the impact of those programs coming to an end will be something to monitor carefully. EDC, as Pat has noted, will continue to drive the implementation of the division's equity plan to ensure more equitable access to economic and cultural opportunities. And also, as Pat noted, we'll be renewing our strategic and policy guidance through the development of a new 5-year divisional strategic plan next year. So with that, I believe that is the end of our slides, and we would be happy to take any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Questions for the presenters? Councillor Carroll, I believe you have a...
Yeah, I emailed in. I do have a question. And I think it's for both of you. But I think Mr. Novogrodsky will remember my reference to this. If I go back to 2009, it was as if we'd lost our minds over the fact that it was the Legacy City of Toronto's 175th anniversary. We were making jokes calling it the demi-semi-sesquicentennial, but we got funds from the federal government and we proceeded with a big splash. You know, arts groups ended up being engaged and employed to come up with logos, come up with screenings and celebrations that we could have. There were a lot of events and they all happened around City Hall here. And I know that special events are a challenge to even think of planning, and yet we have found ways to do it. We have all these things that end in the letters TO. The art that's happening right now, we're somehow managing to do it. And so I'm wondering, how the councillors of North York might band together and get some sort of momentum around doing something about the fact that next year marks the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the incorporation of a place called North York. Is there a way to make that a cultural happening that is not just because we want it happening, but it actually could be incorporated in the recovery efforts you just presented? Things that employ youth, things that get culture groups going, things that animate business association and BIA areas. All of that could be part of this. And so it seems to me that some effort should be made to do something about North York's centennial, which takes place early June 2022. Is that possible to do anything about at this date?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Carroll, I'll start, and perhaps my colleague Tobias will want to weigh in. I'm starting as my role is responsible for city-led cultural events. I think that presents an opportunity to be able to celebrate the distinctiveness of North York, and as you suggest, to be able to draw people back into the public realm and provide those benefits to small business and just neighbor to neighbor reconnection. I will admit it's nothing that is on planning for right now, but it is something that we can look at. And I think a good place to start would be with the North York Historical Society and look at what the baseline community celebrations expectations are. And then we could look to augment that in a way that is driven by the community's expectations.
Is it possible to sort of build on that model? If there's any documentation left, to go back to 2009 and look at, because it was suddenly sort of by chance discovered that it was going to be the 175th by then Deputy Mayor Pantaloni, and in pretty short time frame, he was able to get the federal government to help, so that things were pulled together in about 6 months' time, shockingly. But is it possible to go back and look at that documentation? How was the case made? To which ministry did we go first, and all of that stuff? Could that be done in the near future? And do you need a motion to do so, or should I roll the dice and just have you take that as an undertaking away from today's meeting with North York councillors?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Carroll. I hope it's not akin to rolling the dice, but we can make an undertaking to take it away and look. There are relevant provincial and federal programs that we can use in the past. So we would start there and look at who might be able to assist us.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for Councillor Cole?
Yes, the question I had is, you know, on Eglinton West, we've had 10 years of construction hell between Yonge Street and Keele Street. We've lost 140 small businesses. And I'm just wondering what economic development can do to bring back some of these small businesses, or help them to get some compensation from the provincial government that was promised, never given. So any plans to do anything about these 140 businesses and all these people that lost their jobs and lost their life savings? I know it's not your, you know, the onus isn't just on economic development, but what can we do about that to bring back some of these people that were devastated by 10 years of construction?
So through the chair, the question of compensation for businesses that have been impacted by infrastructure and capital development in the city is a really, really complicated one for obvious reasons. I think where we are focused right now is on creating an environment where businesses can be, that are currently active, and future businesses that may wish to come into the area can be supported as quickly as possible. And that in turn may create opportunities either for business operators or for workers who've been displaced by the disruption that's already occurred. One set of instruments for doing that is the funding that was recently announced by the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, FedDev Ontario, which will be providing the city $18 million between now and the first part of 2024 for a series of Main Street recovery and renewal programs. That funding does include $1 million to the Black Business and Professional Association to provide technical assistance and supports to businesses in Eglinton West, Little Jamaica. It also includes funding for a retail accelerator program for existing small businesses. It will provide training as well as a micro grant of up to $10,000 to small businesses. There's an expanded set of programs to business operators to make leasehold improvements to their commercial spaces, either to make those spaces more viable, or if they have already become vacant, to allow them to be sublet or let out more quickly. So there isn't that blight that boarded up storefronts represents. And there's up to $6 million for that program. So there are 6 programs, and critically, we are focused on making sure that those resources are accessed by businesses in the parts of the city, including along Eglinton, that have either been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic or, in this case, by significant infrastructure development.
Well, anyways, that's for another day to, just look at the fact that we've got to do something to compensate businesses for 10 years of infrastructure work. Anyways, the other comment I just want to make is I think that the real success story has been Cafe TO. I want to commend everybody at Economic Development. I mean, this has been so well received. Our main streets are so alive with people on the side of the road, sidewalks, enjoying, the food and drinks and activities. I think it's one of the best things that Toronto's ever done to basically bring a life and bring a lifeline to small businesses. And it's something that's really been a relief for all of us that have been going through this year and a half of pandemic hell. So again, kudos to Economic Development for basically putting people on the pavement and enjoying street life. You think we were in Amsterdam and Rome sometimes with all the activity on our main streets. So great job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for the presenters? Councillor Fillion?
First of all, just a great job on a lot of fronts. Pleasure working with the team, Pat. Just had a question about, you'd mentioned North York Arts, and I know that funding has been going up over the years, and I certainly appreciate that. But on a per capita basis, I think we're still very underfunded. And just wondering if there is kind of a plan to continually correct that.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Fillion, thanks for the question. Short answer is yes, there is a plan to correct it. We're conscious that the existing allocations across the 6 LASSOs are a function of history and don't reflect the catchment when one begins to look at it from a cost driver perspective, per capita cost to serve residents. As a result, we've been working with the LASSOs to try to bring up the underfunded LASSOs, which has come at points by reallocating money previously afforded to the higher funded LASSOs. In addition, we're going to undertake a cultural development review outside the core to try to get a better read on exactly what are the best investments and services to accelerate cultural development outside of the core. There remains some bellwether indicators like access to Toronto Arts Council operating grants, where we would like to see faster growth outside the core. So we are going to undertake a review initiated in late 21 to figure out what's going on, how can we better intervene, and what's the role of the LASSOs within that. And then thirdly, one element is our commitment to Los Altos has been, while we need to get to more equitable operating allocations, we are also viewing them as our core partners for any major city initiatives. And as a result, they've all benefited from a significant increase in project grant money. So in the case of North York Arts, that's been 71,000 this year, up from 32 last. So it's not perfect, it's not operating, but it is providing them a bit of a cushion as we undertake these reallocations. We circulated a briefing out to all of your offices last week with more detail probably than you really want on the current picture of allocations and where we're hoping to go.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fillion. Anyone, other questions? I just have a couple. When it comes to cultural hotspot, my understanding was that 2020 was North York's cultural hotspot. Well, we know what happened on March the 11th. But yet on the slides, I noticed that cultural hotspot has been taking place this year. When I sort of asked on whether we could reschedule, the answer was sort of no. They had other fish to fry. Is cultural hotspot across North York active in 2021?
To you as Chair, Councillor Pasternak, short answer is yes. The focus on North York exclusively was changed to include North York, but also use Cultural Hotspot as a platform under Show Love TO, Artworks TO, to get citywide reach with a focus on areas, retail main streets, for example, that were particularly hard hit in the pandemic. So this deck does speak to cultural hotspot activations in North York in 21, but we can certainly revisit when we are through our recovery efforts, the rotating schedule for specific communities that define cultural hotspot in the pandemic and where North York should sit within that.
So it's safe to assume it's not the traditional cultural hotspot that we are used to. It has been, it's morphed into other projects.
That's correct.
Okay. Nuit Blanche, traditionally a downtown event. I realize during the pandemic it's a little difficult, to put it mildly, to run it. We've always felt left out here in North York. Now, I understand the last time it was done in person, Scarborough had a pilot project. When are you coming up to North York?
To you, Chair, in 2022. So you're right, in 2019, Scarborough was a pilot anchored at the Scarborough Town Center and Scarborough Civic Center. It proved very successful. On the strength of that, we've developed a plan to take Nuit Blanche citywide for 2022 as the closeout event for the year of public art that spans 21-22. North York, the plans are coming together, focus on Downsview. Your efforts, and we're very happy with the partners in North Preston, Canada Lands Corp. But North York Arts is engaged, and we're looking at the Yonge Street corridor as a bit of a spine for the expansion. So we expect to be able to activate in multiple North York communities with Nuit Blanche in 2022.
Okay, thank you for that. Show Love TO. We did our picture on Wilson Avenue with the Wilson Village BIA. I think it's a very exciting initiative, gets people emotional. But I understand it's short-lived, that these units, these hearts, will be gathered up and stored just in the coming weeks. A request came in to allow them to stay till at least Valentine's Day. In light of the heart there, it sort of makes sense. Can an extension be discussed, or they're taken all back, and that's sort of the end of the program?
To you as Chair, Councillor Pasternak, I think as people are indicating, it makes sense to extend the hearts. Love TO is the name of the activation, developed in partnership with Tabia, and I think this would be Tabia's view. So we're just working out the details of exactly how that will take place, but they will be extended. details to come.
All right. Okay, that's great to know. I think the other things, I know the moratorium on namings. Now I realize that's part of our whole review process. I just wanted to let you know that that is a major bottleneck in North York, as numerous places of interest have a growing backlog of requests for namings following existing policy, not a new policy. So I think there has to be when that moratorium comes off, there has to be a game plan to be able to review these requests, because they're stacking up in my area, and I'm sure in others as well.
To you as Chair, Councilor Pasternak, yeah, the recognition review policy, which encompasses that moratorium, is being developed now and due back to council in the near future. We have precedent in that the public art strategy approved by council in December 2019 also did adopt a moratorium on the acceptance of donations of public art. But to your point, we recognize that would build up pent-up demand, and it allowed us the time to allocate new resources to deal with that surge. So that will be taking place in public art, and we would model the operational impacts of any delay as well for when the recognition review policy is adopted and allows for renaming to start occurring again, or naming to start occurring again.
Oops, thank you very much. Any other questions for the presenters? Speakers? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the North York councillors. My question's about our centennial. Mr. Tobin gave us a great answer. North York Historical Society is a great place to start, but I think that we need to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we do a little better than that. I'm considering a motion, but I'd like to take the motion to council, because I think we have to really proactively do something to honor this. I would hate for this to be a paragraph in the North York Mirror and that's it. When you consider the celebrity pageant that was paraded past us for a 175th in 2009, it will be the 175th for Scarborough and Etobicoke in 2025. It will be the 200th centennial of both Scarborough and Etobicoke in 2050. I suspect these are things that will be captured and celebrated in those areas. They have a tendency to be very very patriotic about those things. We suffer often in North York from the fact that, you know, when amalgamation happened, the legacy cities sort of hung on to their patriotism, and for North York, their mayor ended up becoming the mayor of the megacity, and so we kind of felt like we were covered. But you have to celebrate things that are really deeply ingrained in your culture on site and in your space, and that's what North York Arts is about. But look at how long it took that to happen, and it took Councillor Fillion pushing that boulder up the hill for it to happen at all. Years after, there were multiple lassos in the other municipalities. We have to take things on sometimes. Some of the other legacy municipalities keep their New Year's levies alive, things like that. For us, some of you weren't on council then, but it seemed like we were sort of being drawn downtown by the fact that our mayor was moved downtown and into City Hall. But North York is here. I'm speaking virtually now, but for the people who we serve every day, they're in and of North York, and they're going to have their centennial next year. That's a big deal. It's the second most populous place after the legacy city of Toronto. More people in North York than either Scarborough or Etobicoke, and growing fast, and they deserve their celebration. So I've sent you all an email, because I think we need to put a stake in the ground, maybe through a motion to council, maybe through a presentation to executive, that we really expect the city to acknowledge it in a big way. It's the 100th anniversary of incorporating the township of North York. And right now, I think North Yorkers need that more than anything. They've felt very isolated by the pandemic, dealing with an onslaught of change while feeling isolated in it. I think we hear it. There's an edge in people's voices as we go out to serve them right now because they've struggled through this pandemic. And as part of recovery, this could be a very positive thing that could be celebrated through 2022. Certainly, starting now will be the second half of 2022, but that's okay because the incorporation took place in June. And so I hope you'll join me in making sure that this happens and encouraging staff because we got the right answer today. We just need to build from there. Thank you. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. And yes, I had the 100th anniversary in my notes here, but you covered it so nicely. I would 100% agree that it is something that we should celebrate and put some resources into. Any other speakers on the item? I just had a couple of comments and then we can move receipt. And I've sort of already started my comments that I had in my notes of things to bring up was the 100th anniversary, but it was covered, and I believe we should be putting some cultural resources into that. Celebrating our history is vital, and North York has a rich history. I mean, everything from the Sanofi plant and the remarkable transformative inventions and creations that were done on that, from aerospace and the Downsview lands, and of course in commerce, our wonderful network of parks and ravines, our heritage of culture, the arrival of our Russian, Filipino, Italian communities. It's been a remarkable ride, and we should celebrate it. That is for sure. In general, I think that economic development and culture has a crucial role to play in our recovery. And the support they give to whether it be public art or whether it be live theater or music, so forth, this is crucial to getting back to something that we would like to describe as normal. So we're really, on behalf of my colleagues, I just want to thank you very much for that presentation and your commitment to the neighborhoods and communities of North York. And if there's anything we want to do, I guess, to lend some credits to our suggestions, we will bring them as a member's motion to City Council. But we thank you for your initiatives, and we thank you for your ear and listening to us, and we look forward to working with the division more and more as the years go on.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pasternak. Thank you to the committee. Have a good afternoon.
Same to you. Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Carroll, did you want to move receipt of this item?
Sure. So moved, Mr. Chair.
Item's been moved. Receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item North York 27-2, final report, zoning bylaw application 151 Billy Bishop Way. We do have one speaker listed on the item. Sorry, two speakers. Wes Serduka. Is Mr. Serduka on the line?
Yes.
Okay. Are you the applicant or the designer, or?
I'm the architect for the project and the applicant, yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
There isn't really a presentation that I want to offer, but recently we have, yesterday, received a comments from the neighbor across the street, and the comments are based on the previous version of the site plan, and this one that we received the comments on shows two proposed dealerships, and potential problems with the traffic arrangement on the site and on the street. And right now, since April, that item has been addressed. The entrance to the site has been realigned with proposed development to the north, and the development itself is low traffic, and even though it's a car dealership, it doesn't generate too much traffic. The customers come for service through appointments, and there's always limited number of customers that come to purchase the vehicles. And based on my past experience with car dealerships, they generate a very little traffic in the area, especially in the neighborhood that is so intensive in terms of retail, Costco and Best Buy and others in the area. So Billy Bishop is really a very intensive road to accommodate this dealership, but this is the only access point that we have to the outside, to the street, and the site is 3 acres, and it's being really unutilized in terms of development. But I'll be glad to answer any questions. The comments are based on the old site plan that is no longer valid. The new one has been coordinated with the planning department, engineering department, and it's fully up to date. And I have sent you guys a copy of it yesterday.
Okay, thank you for this.
That's
yeah, so basically some correspondence distributed to councillors regarding this application was based on an earlier iteration of this design. So any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, Wes, thank you very much. Rosalind Hauser, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm the solicitor for Costco Wholesale Canada, which operates a very busy and successful warehouse membership club across the street from the site of the proposed rezoning. The Costco store and the adjacent Home Depot function together as anchors for the Downsview Power Center, which, as the applicant mentioned, has a series of other boxes like Best Buy. There was a suggestion that the comments that we have filed in the letter that's before you relate to an outdated site plan. That is not the case. We have studied and reviewed the current site plan, and the concerns that are articulated in the letter that are before you relate to the current site plan. So I just want to make that clear. I need to give this community council a little bit of background. When Costco, Home Depot, and the Downsview Power Center were developed 25 years ago, I was actually involved at the time. The city asked Costco, which had purchased the property from the federal government, to dedicate the right-of-way and construct the new public road that is now known as Billy Bishop. The purpose of that road was to provide for a new bypass road to divert traffic away from the congested Dufferin and Wilson intersection. As you're probably aware, Billy Bishop Way does perform that function, and it actually serves as a very important access route to the Costco store and the rest of the power center, and it's quite a busy road. As the area develops, there's been a regeneration area plan for the neighboring lands. We expect, with that intensification, we expect there to be even more traffic in that Dufferin-Wilson regeneration area. So the proper functioning of the road, Billy Bishop Way, is extremely important to Costco because of the large volumes of customer traffic that the road carries to the Costco store. That is why Costco asked its traffic consultant, BA Group, to review the paradigm traffic study. And they actually spoke to the consultant as well before preparing the letter that has been filed with Community Council. The letter that is before you from BA Group, which does analyze, as I say, the latest access arrangements, identifies a number of functional and safety concerns regarding the driveway location. And this stems from the curvature of Billy Bishop Way and also the queuing lengths that occur at the signalized intersection of Billy Bishop Way and Dufferin. So it relates to the traffic that is already queuing, not the volumes that would come from the car dealership, which admittedly are not very high, but it's the relationship between the driveway exiting the traffic and the queuing that is of concern. It's for that reason that BA Group recommends a functional design be prepared to analyze these safety and functional issues and to consider whether there should be restricted turns at the site driveway. Our consultant asked Paradigm whether they had prepared such a functional drawing, and they advised they have not as yet. So in light of all of this, we're suggesting that it would be premature for the rezoning to be approved until these transportation concerns, and particularly the safety concerns, are reviewed in detail by city transportation staff. And as a result of that, we're asking Community Council to refer this application back to staff for that detailed review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? No? I just have a couple. Have you been in touch with our planning department to express these concerns? I do see a letter dated yesterday about this, but had you been in touch with our planning department?
We actually, no, we actually are, we asked our transportation consultant to transportation staff, and the advice we got back was that they would be so busy and so difficult to reach that it would be difficult to do so in advance of this meeting. We only saw the report a few days ago. We would be delighted to do so. And I don't know if transportation staff are available to comment right now, but we'd certainly be happy to speak to them. But I was advised by BA Group that in the time frame that was available to us, that wasn't feasible because of time pressures and their workload constraints.
Well, I've been working on this file for, I think, 4 years. So it's been.
We only got the notice of the public meeting. You're right, it's been around for a long time, but the notice of the public meeting only arrived very recently, and I got in touch with my clients. They contacted me, and we spoke to our planner and our traffic expert, and we very quickly got together to discuss the implications, to assess it. We asked BA to undertake the review that you see in the letter before you. We only had a few days to do so. So I should say that we're not trying to frustrate this development, but it's so critical. The access issues are so critical to Costco that we want to make sure that it is properly addressed. And if staff could be directed to speak to us and discuss it, we would be happy to do so immediately. We're not trying to slow things down. We just want to be sure that these legitimate transportation concerns are addressed.
Okay, we're going to try and get staff to answer a couple of your concerns. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Well, I guess it would just be me. Do we have planning? Ben, do we have you somewhere, or someone who can answer the questions? I'm just gonna use up my time to have staff respond to the last deputant, who seems to be representing the owners of Costco, that have concerns about, I think, turning and sight lines and driveway configurations. Can you respond to that? I've been told that most of that is related to an earlier iteration of the plan, and that these problems have been corrected. Mr. Rozowski, are you going to speak to this, or someone else in planning?
Yes, Councillor Pasternak. The concerns that are raised have come in recently. We haven't had any recent conversations with the applicant for Costco. We dealt with them through the Dufferin Wilson regeneration area in terms of alignments of proposed streets. So we're trying to align, would refer people to the site plan, which is located on page 27 of the report that clearly shows the alignment that we're trying to achieve with the new north-south street on the north side of Billy Bishop Way. We're happy to have the discussions, including transportation services staff on this item. I would note, though, that we're dealing with the zoning bylaw amendment at this point in time. The building is pushed to the far south of the site. So if there was to be some adjustment in terms of access, that sounds more like a site planning matter. But if there would like to be, if there would, the intent is to have some assurance that we aren't going to have a problem in terms of a building footprint that's being established in the zoning bylaw, then we'd be happy to have a conversation on this particular item.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? Any speakers? Okay, Councillor Carroll, would you move the staff recommendations?
Sure, it's in your ward, but I'll move them if you would like. Yes.
Sometimes I move to the vice chair to move some staff recommendations. I would just simply say that this is a car dealership. This is a file that's been hanging around for, from what I can tell, 4 years. It's been made more modest than originally scheduled. I don't know who these people are. We really haven't been in touch with them, but they're working with planning. Seems like, you know, a good use of that site. Its situation, its location, the design. I was particularly interested in the landscaping plan, which seems to be robust, because that's what we're expecting of new car dealerships that pop up. So those conclude my remarks. All those.
Do you want me to put it to a vote?
All those.
Or are you taking the chair back?
Yeah, I'll take the chair back. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 27.3, final report, zoning bylaw amendments, application 1, 3, and 5, Kenton. We do have a speaker. Is Michael Goldberg on the line?
To the chair, one moment, please. To the chair, that speaker is not connected.
Okay, Mr. Goldberg is not connected. We'll have to move on. Questions for staff?
Just
Councillor
one.
Fillion?
Yes, the letter we received, I guess, yesterday, expressing a concern. Have staff looked at that, and does that in any way change the recommendations before us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Councillor, we have looked at that letter. It doesn't impact this site.
Okay, great, thank you.
We still have a site plan application we're dealing with. So
yeah, terrific, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fillion. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Yeah, Councillor Fillion.
Staff recommendations. I'll move the staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved on 27.3, zoning bylaw amendment 1, 3, and 5, Kenton Drive. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 27.4, request for direction, zoning bylaw amendments, site plan applications 126 to 132, Laird Drive. I do have Jeff Cattell listed as a deputant. Is Mr. Cattell on the line?
Chair Pasternak.
Yes.
Councillor Robinson.
Yes.
Could I ask that we bundle 27.4 and 27.5? I understand at the end we'll have to vote on them separately, but it's the same application. So to repeat everything twice is a bit senseless. So that's my request.
Sure, I'd be happy to combine the items. Jeff, are you on the line?
To the chair, the speaker is connected and they're currently unmuted, so they should be able to speak and we should be able to hear them if they're speaking.
So, Jeff, if you can hear us, please proceed. We've combined items 27.4 and 27.5, so if you could curtail your remarks to include both of those, that'd be appreciated.
To the chair, I've also messaged the speaker in WebEx chat in case they're having any difficulty, but I've yet to see a reply.
Okay, we will have to move on. If Mr. Cattell does come on the line, we'd be happy to hear him then. So, as mentioned, 27.4, 27.5, bylaw amendments to 126 to 32 Laird and 134 Laird. Questions for staff? No questions for staff. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Robinson?
Thank you very much. I would like to speak on this item. It's a very important issue in Leaside, and that's why Jeff Cattell is on the line. I hope we're able to hear from him. But I would actually start by thanking Jeff Cattell and the Leaside Residents Association, of which he's co-chair, for their engagement on this file, as well as the Randolph Road residents who are wildly impacted, quite frankly, by this application. In particular, I want to thank Andrew and Donna and Leslie and Merzana because they've shown real leadership on this file in trying to work with the applicant, which has not been the easiest thing to do. And there's been a number of concerns that all of us have in regard to the current form of this application. One of the main things I'd like to see happen is the rear yard setback increased to incorporate at least a 5-meter landscaped buffer. That would be a good starting point to create some more positive feeling about this application. And what I will say to you is this is perfectly in line, my request, with the Laird in Focus plan. We have a plan, Laird in Focus, OPA 450. Let's work within the plan that was worked on by all parties for many years. And that's why I'm asking for the setback, because it aligns perfectly with the Laird in Focus plan. This is a key policy, quite frankly, in the Laird in Focus plan. So, and we just approved it recently by council. It feels like months ago, but it was probably a couple of years. So we set out a plan. There's extensive consultation that goes into it. City council endorses it, and already we're straying from it. So, sorry, my throat's a bit funny. So basically, this is one of many issues. And we also want to really reinvent Laird Drive. The streetscape there and the public realm are, I don't know if you've ever driven down Laird Drive, but it's not memorable in any way. So we'd really like to rehabilitate that street. And it's critical that we get these setbacks in order to deliver the commitments made to the residents on the streetscape and public realm improvements to reanimate this roadway that could be quite striking and beautiful, and a beautiful part of our city. So it's really frustrating because this developer's appealed this key policy piece in the Laird in Focus plan that I'm referencing about the policy 7.5, which requires a setback of 3 meters from Laird Drive above and below grade. And so we can't accomplish our vision in Leaside or in the city or in this neighborhood unless this policy, this key policy piece is recognized and adhered to. And yet we have this developer, working on this application, but in a parallel way, fighting the city on this key policy piece where we want to have a beautiful streetscape. And that's our right, to have wide sidewalks and to have beautiful public realm. That's our right as a city and as a community and a neighborhood. So this is very disappointing that at our public meeting we're talking about this application, and at the same time, we're this very developer is pushing back on a city policy that we just developed as a community with all the various parties involved. So unfortunately, this application and the related OPA 450 appeal, like so many other Toronto applications, are now in the hands of the ever-changing name of the OMB, LPAT, Ontario Land Tribunal, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how many times a name can change in a matter of years, but this is no longer in the city's hands. It's in the OLT's hands. And the key policy piece and Laird and Focus and this application. So I want to thank Sarah Ovens and John Andriesky for their thorough and detailed pair of reports, because there's two reports that I've asked to bundle today before us. So thank you very much to city planning staff, John and Sarah particularly, who have been incredibly thorough and detailed in their reporting. And I will be moving to adopt staff recommendations today. And I don't know if Jeff Cattell's on, but it would be great if we could hear from him as well.
Jeff, are you there?
To the chair, we have a new call-in user that we need to identify. It may be Jeff. So to call in user 416-425, I'm unmuting your line. If you can identify yourself, please.
Yes, it's Jeff Cattell. I apologize. I don't know why I was having trouble there getting through from my desktop, but I basically just switched to the phone, and I guess we'll go from there.
So Jeff, before you, sorry, Jeff, just before you get in, it's Councillor Pasternak here. We have combined items 27.4 and 27.5. So if you could tailor your remarks to include both, that'd be appreciated. You have 5 minutes.
Councillor Pasternak, absolutely. That's in fact our letters on these two items, which are obviously adjacent across Stickney Drive. Our comment. They are the same. And oppose the application in its current form. We agree that a mid-rise residential building represents an appropriate level of intensification as mandated by the Laird in Focus plan for development on the west side of Laird Drive, we have a number of key concerns, and Jay's already mentioned some of them, but it does not create a vibrant public realm on Laird Drive due to a lack of non-residential uses on the ground floor. Live-work units are not an acceptable option as they do not provide active uses. It does not provide an unobstructed setback on Laird Drive to accommodate public realm improvements such as wider sidewalks, bike lanes, and landscaping trees. It does not allow for appropriate transition to the neighborhood's designated lands to the west. And it does not comply with angular plane and height provisions in the lead in focus guidelines. We note that the applicant has appealed to the LPAD and now, of course, the Ontario Land Tribunal, the lead in focus policy of a minimum setback of 3 meters from the Laird Drive right-of-way, despite it being recommended by lead in focus with full community input and City Council approval. I would mention that the setback and the improvements to the streetscape on Laird Drive, as Jay said, are really important for the future. The Laird Drive is not only an access to a light rail transit station on Eglinton, it will also be actually accessible to a new Ontario line station in Thorncliffe Park. So, you know, it's people in the south end of Leaside in the future will actually basically be able to decide, do I want to go over to the Laird station on Eglinton, or do I want to go to the Thorncliffe station? It's further away, but it's not that much further away. And the access, walking and biking is going to be important. We note that the application, when I say the application, I mean obviously for both properties, commits only to the Tier 1 of the Toronto Green Standards, the minimum level. We would support the development being built to a higher tier to appreciably reduce or eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, we note that in the case of 134 Laird, in fact, neither reports address cultural heritage considerations. But in the case, there was the Laird in Focus did include a cultural heritage resource assessment a couple of years ago, and although it did not lead to a recommendation from staff to list the property, in fact, it did note that there was some significance there, and in fact, we've looked at that some more. There's extensive what's called vitrolite. It's a black glass. And somebody like Dave LeBlanc, as you know, the architecturist in the Globe and Mail, he gets into raptures about this stuff, and he wrote to us about it. This was Paul Williston Motors. You remember the thing, swing over to Williston? It was a well-known former car dealership. Anyway, it wasn't recommended for listing, and it's probably too late to do more on that respect. But nevertheless, we believe that consideration should be given to heritage standard recording and documentation of the building before it would be allowed to be demolished. Thank you. That's our comments, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Any questions for the deputants? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so thank you, Jeff. That was a great synopsis of the concerns. Just in summary, the massing, the transition to the neighborhood, impact on Laird Drive streetscape. You did an excellent job describing that. Even the unit mix, people want to see more 2 to 3 bedroom family units. But the thing I want to zero in on with you is this retail use and commercial use or lack thereof. So the applicant, I want to reemphasize the fact the applicant is not proposing retail or any other commercial use on the ground floor. And I understand, Jeff, and you would know much better than me, under the former Town of Leaside bylaw, no dwelling units are permitted without commercial use at grade. And, you mentioned the live workspaces, but that's not going to animate the streetscape and really build a complete community, which is what we're trying to do with Laird. Again, I encourage you to drive down Laird if you haven't, to see the huge need for reinventing that space. So how concerned are you about the fact that there's not retail on the lower level as indicated, as requested, or not requested, as dictated by the various bylaws, and what impact will that have on this vision for Laird, which you've been involved in, again, way longer than I have been? If you could speak to that.
Well, we would absolutely support retail. There's retail across the road, and there's retail further south, and sort of a mixed. It's not Bayview, but certainly could be improved. And so yeah, we absolutely are supporting that.
And the fact that the applicant hasn't proposed that, do you see that as a major concern?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other questions for the deputant? Speakers on the item? Thank you, Jeff. Speakers in the item, just a reminder, we've combined 27.4 and 27.5. Councillor Robinson, or?
Spoken. I spoke before the deputant, but I would move again I think we have to vote on them separately, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe we do. So I would move both items. I would move staff recommendations on both items.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
On 4 and 5.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, two separate votes on NY 27.4, request for directions report, 126 to 132 Laird Drive, moved by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. NY 27.5, request for directions report, zoning bylaw amendments, site plan control applications, 134 Laird. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 27.6, request for direction, zoning bylaw amendment, rental housing demolition applications. I'm not going to read out all these addresses. And I do have one deputant listed, Ila Pagas.
To the chair, that speaker is not connected.
Okay, we're going to have to move on then. If she joins us, we'd be happy to hear her comments. Questions for staff? Councillor Cole.
Yes, the question I have for staff is could you list the reasons again briefly of why the staff is basically not supporting this application and recommending we send staff and legal to the OMB, ALPAT, Ontario Land Tribunal, the Vatican, whatever it's called there. So could you just list the reasons?
Through the chair, we have several concerns. I'll do a high-level summary of our concerns on this development application. We would prefer it actually have a larger site area, which includes the TD Bank to the south, but the applicant has not been able to acquire that property. We would prefer that it be connected directly with the Lawrence subway station. From a massing perspective, the proposal breaches the angular planes, in particular the angular plane to the west to the neighborhood designation. The proposal is too high. The massing is such that we feel that it's an overdevelopment of the property, and that's why we're recommending that the application be refused by the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Okay, thank you for that short, concise summary. So I guess they appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal because the city did not respond. How many days does the city have before they can appeal?
Kathy is on the senior planner in the file. She could probably go through the dates with respect to when it was appealed in conjunction, but basically they did appeal for lack of decision by city council. And she can also go through the dates with respect to hearing dates coming up. But it is a standard in the Planning Act, 90 days for the appeal, the applicant's rights in terms of appeal.
Was it 120 before?
Yes, the timeline was reduced by the province.
That's Bill 108 or whatever, one of those bills. Yes, so I don't need the exact dates. The other confusing issue in regards to this item before us is there's the demolition applications for a number of rental properties that are over the stores on Yonge Street, and there's been some correspondence back and forth from some residents about the number of units, and as we know, the magic number is 6. So the applicant is claiming there was only 5, and then we have a letter from a Mr. Leo, I think it is, saying there were 6 and he was the 6th, whatever it is. Could you clear up that controversial part of this item?
Yes, that is correct. We are trying to get information from the previous owner and the current owner with respect to the rental units. I direct you to page 16 of the report where that is covered off. Where at this point in time, we are still not confirmed the number of rental replacement units that we would have in conjunction with this redevelopment.
So at what point should we as a council, or myself as the local councillor, intervene or move something to deal with this controversy over the number of units? What will the process be to try and essentially clear this up?
So as I said, we're waiting for information. Our CEPA staff are involved in the review of the rental replacement units. At this point in time, it's kind of a parallel process in terms of the establishment of the rental replacement units. That would certainly be one of the items that would be dealt with by the OLT at the hearing.
Okay, so the Ontario Land Tribunal would determine, make a ruling on who's right, whether it's the 6 units that members of the public are talking about, or 5 that the developer is saying are the ones that are being demolished. Am I correct?
I'm sure we will have parties and participants as part of that hearing, and some of those residents within the existing buildings will be participating in the hearing, and there will be evidence that will be given. I'm sure the applicant will be providing their evidence of 5 units, and then we will have both our city staff and the residents providing, from what we have seen to date, evidence that there is in fact a 6th rental unit on the property.
And has the Catholic School Board, as you know,
Councillor Cole, you're well over 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff on this item? Any speakers?
Yes, I'll ask the.
Oh, yeah.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
I think what Councillor Cole was alluding to is the Catholic School Board and the school that's immediately in the shadow of this proposal. What is their position on their, I know you've connected with them, but what is their position on this and their concerns?
Yes, through the chair, I'll clarify that there is a school within a neighborhood's designation. So with respect to meeting the angular plane, I think this applicant is thinking it's a school site as opposed to residential development. There is a residential unit on the northern end of the abutting property. We have advised the applicant that we know school sites can redevelop, and generally they redevelop with residential, or it's a mixed-use building. So it's important to achieve the 45-degree angular plane. I know we have a lot of correspondence from the residents in the area talking about congestion related to the school. So that is one of the concerns that the school board has in providing access to this local school and other local schools in the area.
Very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other questions for staff on this item? Okay, speakers. Councillor Cole, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as the general manager of the Western District Community Planning, Al Wazowski, very succinctly outlined the reasons why the report put forward by city staff is objecting to this proposal and asking us to support the sending of planning staff and legal staff to the Ontario Land Tribunal to oppose this application. Again, the number of points are quite cogent here. The fact that this is a very busy corner because abutting this development proposal is Blessed Sacrament School. And there's also an entrance to the Lawrence subway station there on Bedford Park Avenue. It's a very narrow sidewalk. There's people in the morning, it's mayhem there. In the afternoon with people driving in, walking in, trying to get to the school. So the staff had asked the applicant to consider putting in an underground connection between the development and the entrance to the Lawrence West subway station. That would have made a lot of sense, but the applicant has not complied with that request. So that's going to make it difficult to make this site work. On top of that, they have the whole block, but they don't have the corner. So you still have a bank on the corner. And so it makes for a very tight site. It's not very deep. And it also, again, there's no respect to the angular plane in terms of the school. And, it's always sort of discouraging that the developers are always stretching the envelope. I mean, if this was a mid-size, 8 stories, it would make sense there, given the size of the lot that they've purchased, the lots. But no, this is asking for 12. And in this north of Lawrence here, they're basically they're 3-4-story buildings. Across the street there's a 4 or 5-story building that's a small condo there next to the old Chrysler dealership, fire station, whatever it is there. So it's really out of proportion to what's there, and this would set a precedent again. If they got 12 here, then the next one would come and they would stretch it again to ask for 14, and they just keep going up and up. And the sort of the challenge here is that with the new provincial policies that ask us to intensify near major transit stations, the developers are really coming in very aggressively with their applications now. So as much as it's great to have density near transit stations, it's almost like a Trojan horse, because what happens is, the transit station is there, and then all of a sudden we have very aggressive applications coming in, and they use the transit station as the rationale. Sure, there has to be density near, but not to the point where they're always exceeding, the official plan of the area. They're not respecting the character of the area, because to the west and to the east of this Yonge Street community here, it's single-family homes. Whether it's Bedford Park, Woburn, all these streets, it's a very residential neighborhood with small retail on Yonge Street, and it's a very vibrant retail strip. And so this is why I support the staff report that basically objects to this application, because it is, as mentioned by Mr. Wazowski, it doesn't really fit the neighborhood and the plans for the future of the neighborhood.
If you could,
and it's just too aggressive.
Councillor Cole, if you could just wrap
So
up.
anyway, and I will wrap up, and I hope that the members of council will support the staff recommendation. to send our lawyers and planners to the almighty Ontario Land Tribunal.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Cole. I hope there's no more speakers on this item. Any more speakers on this item? Oh, there's always room for Councillor Robinson.
Why do you hope? Why do you hope?
No, there's always room for Councillor Robinson to speak.
I was waving my hand earlier, so just so you know, I was trying to speak. But I have to say I don't really need to speak because Councillor Cole's done such a great job on this application generally, but also his remarks today really hit the mark. I will tell you a few things. This also impacts my ward because it's directly across the street. We share Yonge Street, Mike Cole and I, Councillor Cole, and this is a very wonderful part of Yonge Street where there's been lots of wonderful ice cream shops, yogurt shops, the bank, little places, boutiques and little food stores that kids go to after they head out of the Blessed Sacrament School or Bedford Park Public School. So there's actually 2 schools right near this application. And it's a bit of a heartbreak. I lived on Woburn Avenue. I think Councillor Cole also at one point in his life lived on Woburn Avenue. And it's a bit of a heartbreak to see this happening because it's quite a magical part of Yonge where you always see lots of school kids racing about trying to get to school or going for a snack after school. So I just want to identify again the major concerns my residents have. And I'll tell you, Mike Cole and I attended the public meeting and it was a huge response from the public in speaking up and also attending. I can't believe how many people set aside the evening to participate in what they felt was a very concerning application for many of the reasons Councillor Cole has already identified. But again, the height, the intensification, the overdevelopment, the road safety impacts for those 2 schools, 0 green space. I mean, insufficient isn't described, the lack of green space. And, you know, the loss of these 12 retail storefronts that I was just alluding to or referring to at the top end of my comments, just really sad to see these go and the inappropriate scale of the building. So, meaning impact on the neighborhood character. So it's just, this is a really concerning one. Also, I just want to also identify this resident that has brought up the fact that the rental units have not been counted appropriately. And he lives in the owner-occupied unit. So I'm really happy to see that Councillor Cole's on top of that and pushing for some corrective action around that. So the truth to be told, it's worrisome that the facts aren't in place and that we aren't being told what's really going on there. But we've heard directly from local residents, meaning people that are directly impacted. So I'll leave it at that, except to say, again, loss of affordable housing replaced with expensive apartment units again and again and again. Loss of affordable housing, expensive high-end apartment units. This is a concern in the city. So I hope you'll support Councillor Cole's motion on this. And I want to also thank city staff for their extensive work.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other speakers on the item? Councillor Carroll, I see.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't speak on this. I was a bit distracted during 4 and 5, but in all of these requests for direction, this is an opportunity for residents to see the kind of work that planning does when an applicant leapfrogs their way to the OLT. It's important for people to note that while we go in opposition, they may still get their approval. But it's important to note here, because later on, these things end up moving into a confidential discussion, but it's important for us to toot planning's horn here, because what they've listed in this item is, if you approve it, we're still asking you to withhold your permission. All of these issues still have to be addressed, no matter what sort of easy permission they might get from the province. And I think it's important to be realistic with the residents. They could get very easy permission from the province. This is not only near a subway station, this is between the exits of a subway station. This is right over top of Lawrence Station. North of it is Woburn, where the northern exit from the platform is. It's between the main station and the last exit and staircase out of the station. And the province will definitely look at that. There's no question they will look at that. But it's important to note that city has a strategy here that even if you get your PAT approval from the province, we expect, because it was a commitment the province made when they designed LPAT, and they said they were going to keep this when they changed that to OLT, that their preference is always that there is a proper settlement with the city. So even if we get our noses thumbed at us and this goes through, they still have to come back to our city planning department and work out some of these issues that we see here. The issue the resident raised about the tenant count not being quite right. We can revisit the assistance plan, make sure it's right. That's in here. You don't get to just leapfrog over us, get a quick and dirty approval from the province and not come back to us to talk about community benefits. It's important to note that, so that if this building should be built in some form later on anyway, that people recognize that the city still had, the last word, even though they might go looking to what is a pretty free and easy permitting government with respect to development. We still expect good quality of life planning, and the minutes of settlement will work to achieve that, even if they get their provincial nod. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other speakers on item 27.6? Councillor Cole, did you want to move the staff recommendations?
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, staff recommendations being moved by Councillor Cole on item 27.6, zoning bylaw amendment, rental housing demolition, a series of addresses on Yonge Street. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 27.7, refusal report, zoning bylaw amendment 537, 539, 541, and 543 Eglinton Avenue East. I do not have any speakers listed on this item. Questions for staff?
I've got a quick question for staff.
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
If you could just tell us why you've determined the best way forward is to refuse this report.
Through you to the chair, similar to the last application, this building is too tall. It is a small site that is experiencing problems in terms of meeting our urban design guidelines for setbacks and step backs. It has a base building that is too high, as well as the overall height of the tower. There's very little open space on this property, and there's also some issues with respect to access. They would greatly benefit from growing the property, picking up additional lands, but in its current form, it's overdevelopment of the property.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other questions for staff? Speakers on item 27.7, a refusal report. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would just identify this is my 6th development application on this agenda. And I have no shortages of them on most agendas, but this is 6 for me today. I have to just throw out huge bravo credit to city planners. I think we have awesome city planners in North York. And particularly, I want to thank Jason Brander, the senior planner on this file, for his work, along with Al and the whole planning team. City Council is being recommended to City Council to refuse, or to North York Community Council to refuse this application, and to direct staff to attend the upcoming OLT. I would say that Al has done an excellent job quickly, succinctly describing what the problem is here. And I also would say to you that if you look at these applications before us today, the level of aggression, the aggressive behavior we're seeing is really disappointing. And I think we all know why we're seeing it, right? So what's going on provincially, that is influencing what we're seeing. These developers that think they can do whatever they want. I can't talk too much about it because it makes me too angry, but I would just say that this is a very big concern for our city, for our neighborhoods, for our character areas, which again, work has been done to create policies around this, and they're being completely breached and sidelined. No transition to the neighborhood, zero. And so like lot line to lot line doesn't quite describe it, this one, if you look at the images. So again, I just want to applaud our staff who have really identified this as a no-go, that it's not appropriate for all the reasons Al identified in his remarks and more. But the residents are obviously not pleased about this proposal, and they would love your support today in supporting city staff and trying to get these things right. The height of the building, the FSI is more than triple what we permit. The density, and again, no on-site landscaping, because you can't have any landscaping because of the size of the lot. Nothing for pets. Precedent setting, very worrisome on a precedent setting perspective, and then the proposed setbacks and step backs, insufficient, completely insufficient. And the site is too small to achieve anything better. So I would leave it at that, and I would, Mr. Chair, I would move staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, I'm sorry to add. I know people are watching the clock, but I just want to speak here because of an experience I had on the weekend. We're being watched. There's no question we're being watched. Housing advocates need us to say yes to everything, and we're saying no to this one. And so I just want to take a moment to have them, if they're watching North York Community Council today, to really keep something in mind here. This is right on the Eglinton Crosstown. Something is going to happen here one day. But despite the fact that Ontario needs 1 million homes, 500,000 of them really need to be in the GTHA, no question about that. We need that to happen in 10 years. As a municipality, we can't abandon good planning. And so what you heard Al saying is they need to grow this property. If this is their ambition, they can't do this on a very shallow lot along Eglinton. Is not where you get to do this type of development. Just if you don't want to read our reports and you're a housing activist who just says homes at all costs, scroll down and look at this building, and then Google map this location, and you'll realize, you know, if we were to not refuse this and not try to get this right through the process that will probably evolve over the next couple of years, we would be making a 100-year mistake on this spot. And you don't want us to make a 100-year mistake. You want us to get some homes built along Eglinton Crosstown, no question about it. But planning has to matter. And this one is a really egregious example where the applicant said it's a transit line, planning doesn't matter. And so we actually have to take this position to get them to come to our plan and look at how we hope to develop all those homes that we desperately need. I just needed to make that comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other speakers on the item? All right, I believe Councillor Robinson is moving the staff recommendations, the refusal report 27-7, zoning bylaw amendment for series of addresses on Eglinton Avenue East. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, item 27.8, we were on that item earlier. We did hold it down. We were looking for Stephanie Mativa. Do we have Miss Mativa on the line? Do we find her?
To the chair, it looks like that speaker had reconnected. and they have now disconnected again.
All right. Okay. Well, we've waited as long as we could. So number 27.8, final report, part lot control exemption application, 1204 Avenue Road. It is Councillor Cole in Councillor Cole's area. Questions for staff?
No.
No. Okay, great. Any speakers? Councillor Cole, I'd hope you'd speak so you can move the staff recommendations. Are you prepared to do that?
Yeah, I'd just like to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, staff recommendations moved on 27.8, part lot control exemption, application 1202 to 1204 Avenue Road. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we can go to 2713. This is a held item, Ernest Avenue traffic calming, Ward 17. It was held by Councillor Robinson, I believe. Councillor Robinson, questions for staff? Oops, she's not there. Anyone else? Well, we'll wait a couple minutes, but anyone else questions for staff? Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Have the staff been asked to prepare a report on this?
Through the chair, no, we haven't been asked to prepare a report. This was previously approved in March 2020 to go forward for a poll.
And why aren't we doing the poll?
So a poll was completed. The minimum response rate wasn't met. So the motion is to approve despite the minimum response rate, despite the poll results not meeting the traffic calming policy.
And do you know how many people would have had to have been polled to meet the requirement?
Yes, so 107 ballots were required and 102 were received.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I actually did. Of those that came back, what was the response?
So of the responses received, 47 were in favor and 49 were opposed.
Oh. Okay, now that's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a couple of questions. There's two sets of polling when it comes to speed humps, aren't there? Don't we do two stages of polling to see whether there's support for them, and then we do another set? Or is it just the one?
So there's one stage of polling. Initially, we asked for a petition to be submitted indicating community support. And then once we get community council approval to proceed to a poll, the city conducts a formal poll.
So the first stage is actually a petition, and then the second stage is polling. So did staff receive a petition on this request?
Yeah, so in this circumstance, there was a petition received, and all the criteria of the traffic calming policy were satisfied, with the exception of the positive poll.
Right, so the petition overwhelmingly asked for the polling. Does the petition ask for polling to commence, or is the petition in support of the humps itself?
So the petition would have asked Transportation Services to look into installing traffic calming.
Okay. The last piece, so there's the petition, there's the poll. The last piece is paying for it. And I'm just wondering whether this is, there's wiggle room in the 2021 capital budget to do the work. Well, I guess it's not going to happen this year. 2022, is there wiggle room to do this work if it's approved today?
Yes, this would be included as part of the 2022 program.
Okay. I'm done with questions. I'm just a little concerned that Councillor Robinson wanted to ask questions, and she's back. Councillor Robinson? Jay?
To the chair, the councillor still appears to be connected to the WebEx session.
Councillor Robinson, questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, maybe we should stand these items down and dispense with the 2 tree items, because we're past their statutory time, and then perhaps Councillor Robinson might be back by then.
I was considering that exact action. However, the 2 tree items are Councillor Robinson's. Councillor Cole. We can deal with, I believe Councillor Cole, you've submitted a second new business item?
Yes, just briefly, I'm just asking for a report on why so many new development applications, why the builders, developers are refusing to put up building permits on their construction sites. And I'm just wondering how widespread this is, and if there are any penalties for not putting up building sites, or whether they're even inspected anymore. So that's the report I would like.
All right, if we can put that on the screen, there we go. Okay, that the chief building official, executive director report to the next meeting of North York Community Council on the requirements for posting building permits on residential construction sites, and what are the penalties if the building permits are not displayed? Okay, so it's more of an informational motion. Any questions for staff? Any questions for the mover?
Yeah, can I just have a question of staff if we're waiting for Councillor Robinson there?
Yes, sure.
If I could ask staff, why are so many of these, large development applications, why are they not putting up building permits when requested by staff, by our office? Inquiries have been made for months, and they still refuse to put up building permit signs. I know that a regular homeowner has to put up a building permit if something is being done, but it seems the developers are getting away with no building permit. Or do they have to have a building permit displayed on a site?
Are staff there to answer this?
I guess we'll wait for the report then.
I guess so. Okay, thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff on this item? So we can just vote on it. And I'm trying to get there's Councillor Robinson's back in the meeting. Okay, that's great. So we can continue. Okay, the item on the screen, please. Oh, we need a motion to add this item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item itself, if we can put the motion back on the screen, it's asking staff for a report back regarding building permits on construction sites, and I guess their enforcement and what the consequences are if they're not posted. There we go. All those in favor? Opposed? I don't see anyone. I don't know who would oppose it, but that is, I'm assuming that is carried. Okay, so let's go back to 2713. We have asked a couple of questions of staff. Councillor Robinson, you held that down. It is a letter from Councillor Carroll regarding speed humps. And there was a petition, but the polling did not meet the minimum response, but I'll turn it over to you to ask any further questions.
Thank you very much. I've just heard of recent research around, this is questions for staff, obviously. About 6 months ago, I read a little bit more about the impact on pregnant women. It's from a sound organization. I don't recall who the source was, but that speed hump can be problematic for women that are pregnant. We also often hear from the fire chiefs about impacting, and paramedics about impacting travel time, but also comfort, the ability for the patient to be comfortable en route to what can be, an emergency or worse trauma events, which unfortunately we have a lot of in the city. Representing Sunnybrook, I know the number of trauma incidences they deal with. So I just wanted to get more clarity around those issues that when these are installed, the impacts on travel time for these important emergency responders, as well as this new research around impacts on women that are people that are carrying children, the impacts on their health. Could you share some feedback around those issues?
Yeah, so through the chair, there was research that was released earlier this year that came out of the University of British Columbia that looked at the impact of speed bumps on pregnant women and the fetus. And they found that if you're traveling at anything above 42 kilometers per hour, there is a potential risk of injury to the fetus. Now, in those cases, the speed humps, the size of the speed humps that were looked at were significantly different from the ones that the city installs. So they were more comparable to speed bumps, which are in laneways and are have a lesser width and a greater height than the ones that we install on our roads. I don't know if that research was peer reviewed, but I don't know that it's necessarily comparable with the speed humps that we install on our streets. That would have to be looked at further. In terms of the emergency vehicles, they are circulated whenever there are plans for speed humps. It is known that speed humps do increase the amount of time it takes to respond to a call and does impact the comfort of patients that might be in an ambulance.
Okay, thank you very much. I would also just ask, that was insightful, thank you. Is there any way to measure the impacts of these, meaning in actually slowing down traffic? Because Leaside is got these speed humps everywhere. It's all over they're all over Leaside. And yet, where do I get most complaints about speeding? Leaside. Now, they're close to the crosstown being built, and so there's, infiltration. Having said that, I think it's an ongoing problem in Leaside. But I do witness all the time people, literally, I feel like they're using them as a launching pad to speed up from. So you see people just flying over these obstacles, these impressions in the road, and almost, I'm thinking the north part of Leaside, not just south of the CNIB. I can't remember the street there, but bottom line is people are almost using them as launching pads and just flying over them. And I just don't feel they're slowing traffic at all in the case of Leaside, and getting lots of complaints about volume and near misses and things in Leaside. So any thoughts? I know that's a pretty abstract question, but any thoughts around that?
So the good thing, through the chair, with Leaside is we've got our area traffic planning study that's going to be started, and they'll look at speed and volume as part of that study. In general, the research shows that speed humps do reduce instances of speeding, but that being said, there are still people who will, as you said, fly over a speed hump and behave as though it's not there.
Very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Okay. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Carroll. Anyone else? Okay. Councillor Robinson?
I just wanted to identify those issues. And, you know, I know in Hogs Hollow, council turned down speed humps there on Brookfield, I want to say, but maybe I've got that street wrong. The first one when you're entering Hogs Hollow, they wanted 2 or 3 humps there. I mix up the humps and the bumps, sorry. So, but they wanted some there. North York Community Council turned them down. They're going to reapply. So I don't want to appear two-faced, because I'll probably be like Councillor Carroll, advocating for those 2 or 3 speed humps on that street. She knows her ward. She knows what's needed and what's not. But I do also want to identify these other issues related to these humps being put in. And I think we have to pay close attention to them and the impacts that I hear from lots of people who have medical issues. And so I just want to make sure I'm identifying those as we go through these processes. It's been a long time since we've talked about this, I feel, as a council. It's been kind of, as she indicated, Councillor Carroll, it's been delayed, but we haven't had one of these before us. And I continue to be concerned about when you're getting letters from the fire chief saying, please don't do this. This is a hard decision for me. And of course, I would tell you that every street in my ward would love these, because literally every street. I'm having such complaints about traffic infiltration, speeding. I see it when I'm out walking. It's so frustrating. So I won't get into that tirade, but that tirade of road safety issues. But I think we have to pick and choose where we put these because of the impacts they have on first responders and potentially other people in vulnerable situations. So that's my 2 cents. And I'm not trying to really, try to sideline what Councillor Carroll's trying to do. I respect it, because I'm going to probably be doing it down the road too for certain streets where there's a real huge need. But I just want to be mindful as a community council of these other issues. Also, I see people using them as launching pads. I see people literally in Leaside flying over them. It's very frustrating. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Carroll?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the comments that Councillor Robinson made. The medical issues are why in item 13, these would be the first ever speed humps in all of Don Valley North. If you can imagine that, if you can compare that to Don Valley West, for instance, I have 0 speed humps, 0. And it's largely because of the medical issues. In my first term of council, as that need for speed was really starting up in our community. And there was a confluence of items. We were seeing more speeding, and we were finally resurfacing the bridle path, which, as it turns out, is now in Don Valley West and Councillor Robinson's area. And the question was, should we put those speed humps in there? If we're redoing the road after all this time when it was in terrible shape, let's get rid of them. And EMS came and said, please don't. It's our main route to the Sunnybrook Hospital. And one of Councillor Minnan Wong's well-respected residents. He's rest in peace to that resident, but very well-respected person in Councillor Minnan-Wong's area, came to say, please don't do this. I could be going to, at my age, I could be the one going to Sunnybrook. And so those issues are there. And it's why I have really sort of redirected the residents' focus away from speed humps up to now, and had zero in my ward, and even my larger ward, because Councillor Shiner avoided them as well. But I have these two streets in item 13 and item 14 where conversations began in about 2016, worked their way through. Then we did polling. Some people said, I want speed humps, but please don't reduce the speed. And so they were counted as no's, because you do reduce the speed in order to install a speed bump, as we all know. And so that in both cases, the results were quite close. Here's why we're hearing from the community on these. These are two places. I have a similar, in the morning, I have a similar challenge to what I think Councillor Robinson's ward, Don Valley West, experiences in the afternoon. If there are big issues on the Parkway, and you ask Siri how to get home, it tells us to traverse through Leaside to get there. Avoid the Parkway, go on up, go through Moore Park and Leaside to get home. It drives them nuts. And so there's speed bumps everywhere there that have evolved over time, through Councillor Pitfield, through Councillor Parker. And in Don Valley North, if there are problems on the 404 in the morning, pretty much all of Markham traverses Don Valley North to avoid the 404 section and rejoin the Parkway down at Don Mills South. It is crazy making. And I have two places where Google sends you, Ernest Avenue and Pineway Boulevard, both of which are heavily traveled by elementary school students. It's very frustrating. And both of them, I started the discussion, and Councillor Shiner started the discussion, both places saying, okay, well, what other kinds of traffic calming? What sort of things could we do? But at the end of the day, Mr. Clement kept looking at them and saying, you know, when we do our speed study, when we do our volume study, speed humps are warranted on both these streets. And you know, knock me over with a feather that that's the case, because it usually when we go after these neighborhood wards, it turns out, no, it's not warranted. But in Highway Traffic Act warrants, both of them met it. But our polling requirement, in the way they're worded, they're difficult in diverse communities to get the answers. In the case of item 14, the issue was number of turnout, the number of people. We had a close result, but part of the problem was a lot of people who needed to be polled just didn't return it. We got a good return in earnest, but a confusion about what the poll was asking. And so in both places, when I do a park pop-up and the community comes to see me, they're like, when are we getting those speed humps? Where are they? And people who said, oh, I saw that letter, I didn't know what it meant, so I just said no, because they thought it was about development instead of about traffic. I don't know if they were not reading it correctly or what, but the problem persists to this day, the Google shortcut problem. And so I said, I will try to do this quickly post-pandemic by moving it. But if it's the will of North York Community Councillors that you'd rather get a report from staff and we need to wait a little extra time, I would vote for that motion, because I want you to feel comfortable doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other speakers on the item? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'm going to refer this to staff for a report. That's the first reason, and most community council knows that it drives me insane that we don't rely on staff to do, when we're changing roads, the design of roads, we have a staff there, and one-pagers from local councillors, although well-intentioned, don't really give us kind of the foundational discussion points. We actually gave them a framework for deciding when traffic calming should be put in and when it should not be put in. And I think if we went to them and you know, we throw around this word evidence-based, you know, decision-making, and this is anecdotal, which is fair. I mean, that counts for something. It does, because the local councillor knows something and local community knows something, but also we have to go back to that, these evidence-based reports. I mean, one of my favorite counselor who uses evidence-based language is Josh Mallow, who has probably the most number of unwarranted speed bumps in the city. And just I'll just go back, Shelley. It was Councillor Carroll. It was Gordon McKendrick. He was the one who did that. Who put in the?
Thank you. I couldn't remember Gord's name.
who put in the speed humps in the bridle path, and then Howard Moscow anointed Councillor Joanne Flint the hump queen of North York, if you remember that. That's true. I will say, though, that within the contents of this discussion, it was interesting because, the petition thing is one thing, and you might get a lot of names on the petition, but that's because a guy goes around on the street and asks you to sign it, and he knocks on your door and you're standing there, and this guy's asking you to sign it, your neighbor, and if you don't sign it, you look like as Howard would say, you look like a schmuck. So you got to sign it. The poll is far more relevant because you don't have that neighbor who's pressuring you to sign the petition. And the interesting part of this is that more people didn't want it than did want it. And I think that's material too. And finally, I think it's worth mentioning, I think if we asked our transportation staff, speed humps are not supposed to be used to redirect traffic and down another route or discourage people to travel on a particular road. So I go back to that as well. And that's why ultimately I'm not going to support, based on the current information in front of me, I can't support it, but I'd like to see the report from staff, because I think that's what we've tasked them to do. And not to do that means we're going to invite all sorts of one-pagers, especially next year, during an election year. And if you say yes to one, you're kind of pressured to say yes to all. So I'll move the referral back to staff for a report.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong. Are there any speakers to the referral? Any speakers to the main motion? It looks like it's going back to staff for more study. I was ambivalent to this. I guess in the end I was prepared to support it, but will support referral since it's on the floor. I happen to live on a street with speed humps and with mixed results. They were there before we bought. Some people really do slow down to the 30 kilometers an hour that are flagged at the various humps, and some people go flying over them. The ones that go flying over them are disrespectful and irresponsible, and are also damaging their car. Where it becomes disturbing is when a truck or a vehicle with a trailer goes over them fast, and all the lawn care equipment goes flying up in the air and comes pounding down, or the ladders that are racked on top go up and down, and that is quite loud. Whether that discourages people from driving down our street, I have no way of knowing. It is thought that it does push traffic onto adjoining streets, but they've been there for about 25 years, so we don't know whether those patterns exist anymore. So if we could put the motion on the floor, we'll vote on referral first. Oh, before we do that, I need a motion to finish. And I made the wrong prediction that we'd be done by lunchtime.
To complete the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion from Councillor Carroll to finish the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so the motion of referral is on the floor. And I guess I'll have to see everyone who will be voting on this. All those in favor of referring it back to staff and opposed? I don't see any opposed. Councillor Carroll. So that carries. Referral carries. Pineway Boulevard, and it looks like we're going to go through the same debate again. Is that correct, Councillor Carroll?
Well, yeah, but I can speak to this briefly. It sounds like it's the same sort of situation as Ernest, where staff have done 3/4 of the work. The drawing attached to the item was drawn by staff. It met the warrants, but the poll results were so close that they were inconclusive. The problem has only grown on this street, and so and here it's really grown. The only thing that is helping keep the students safe right now is that north of us is the Cummer Avenue reconstruction project, which is slowing down the traffic temporarily. But we all know what happens when you do reconstruction on a major bus route avenue. When they're done, we have a freshly paved road. The shortcut and the speeding problem through this neighborhood is going to be dire, and it goes right by an elementary school. So this is one where so much work was done by staff, and the agency employed 880 cities, people coming by all summer long to say to me, please redo the poll. I didn't know what that envelope was. I'm desperate to answer yes. I'm really worried about Pineway. On this one, I'm really asking not to refer it. If it is referred on this one, I really must oppose, because the residents are so worried that when the freshly paved Cummer Avenue starts feeding cars onto this street, they will be speeding this very sexy shortcut that gets them from Leslie Street and Cummer Avenue down Pineway and to Bayview and Finch and down to Shepherd, lickety split. And so it's become a very attractive route that people are traveling at unsafe speeds. So on this one, I would ask council's indulgence, but I suspect I hear a referral motion coming.
Without getting into a belabored debate again, any other speakers on the item? Any other motions? I know I didn't really ask for questions of staff. Straight up vote?
I would move to refer it.
Okay, referral motion is on the floor. If we can get clerks to.
On this one, I'll need a recorded vote. Thank you.
I'm waiting for it to be put on the screen so we can vote. Yeah.
They did.
Councillor should see it, yes. Even though we know what it's going to say. Okay, so on item 2714, traffic calming, refer back to the General Manager of Transportation Services for further review and bring a report to North York Community Council. And Councillor Carroll has asked for a recorded vote. We could see the screen again. See everybody. Okay, all those in favor of referral? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Fillion, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, and myself, Councillor Pasternak. Opposed to referral? Councillor Carroll and Councillor Cole. Referral carries. That will be sent back to staff. Okay, item 2715, application to remove a city-owned tree, 338 Bilal Drive. We do have a deputant, Shaheen Jafari. Do we have Jafine on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, good day, everybody. My name is Shaheen Jafari, and I am talking on behalf of the homeowner for 338 Belsize Drive regarding the tree in the middle of the house, middle of the property. Despite having the approval from the committee to build the house, but we have difficulty with this tree. We try a couple of times on different dates, which was March 2021, submit the report from the forester for the tree, and then again April 2021 in order to keep the tree. But unfortunately, any way we have done so far, I mean, we mirrored the drawing 2 times, and we made the report 2 times, and we try to get around it, but it's not possible. So I am requesting from you guys to allow us to remove the tree, because it's already roots from the tree is damaging the old foundation, and even the homeowner moved out because the water is coming from the foundation inside the house. So we cannot build the house despite trying a few times and trying to keep the tree. We love the tree for our children and grandchildren in the future, but we have no other choice to remove the tree. I worked with David Bostock, the acting supervisor. We had a long 7-8 months discussion what to do with it, how to try to preserve it, but unfortunately, based on the attempt we made, not possible to do that. So I'm requesting from you guys to agree with removing the tree, and we are willing to pay for the cost of the tree and 4 or 5 other trees which we have to replant. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? I don't think the deputant is the homeowner, but the homeowner's representative. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the deputant? Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to staff, this is the tree, correct? And can you tell me the condition of the tree? The city staff, could you tell me the condition of this tree? We can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Through the chair, is this the time for staff to respond?
Yes, I'm asking you to clarify if this is, or to identify this as the tree that I'm holding up that's in question, and is this tree healthy, or what's the condition of this tree is my question, David.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, it's a healthy tree. That is the tree. That's the same. I believe that's the same photo that appears in our report submitted, and it's relatively typical of a large tree in front of an existing small bungalow in Leaside. But yes, the tree is healthy.
Okay, and you're recommending to North York Community Council and ultimately City Council to deny the request, correct?
That's our staff's recommendation. We don't have leeway to make any other recommendations at this time.
Is it about 75 centimeters, or what's the size of it? It looks big in the photo, but.
Yeah, the diameter of the tree is 75 centimeters. That refers to its diameter at breast height or shoulder height.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other questions for staff? Yes, Councillor Carroll.
Yes, if I could just ask staff, I was pleased to see in the report. I'm always ranting about, when people want to renovate their houses, and we're worried that the issue that they're going to have with the tree doesn't come up. But from the report, it looks like there's an application to renovate here, and during the discussions with staff or committee of adjustment, I can't remember which, the tree did come up, and the applicant said that they could protect the tree.
Through the chair, yes, through the chair, yes, that's correct. We identified in the same light as the deputant said earlier, we identified when the proposal came to the Committee of Adjustment that the tree would effectively not tolerate the project. We recommended against refusal of variances related to the driveway and to the tree. The Committee of Adjustment approved that during the discussion at the Committee of Adjustment. An agent for the property owner, different from the agent who spoke earlier, had said that the tree would be retained. And so our refusal in this case is in large part due to the comments that were made to the Committee of Adjustment, promising that the tree would not be removed. We do tend to agree with the applicant that removal of that preservation of the tree would be extraordinarily difficult in this situation.
Yeah, and if he indicated that he was going to protect the tree, staff would do what they could to make sure they understood what tree protection looks like, what the circumference would have to be around the tree. I had a similar experience on Bunty Lane in my ward, where the tree is very close to the house like this. They were able to do it, but staff did a lot of advising to help them figure out how to protect the trees for the large home they were building to protect the tree. Sometimes it looked like the tree was going to grow right in the new bedroom window, but it's still thriving today. Did we go through that process with them to try and figure out how they could protect it?
Yes, we did. The deputant referred to that a couple of times in passing in his comments. They looked at options to flip the property, as we call it, not flipping in terms of real estate, flipping in terms of which side the driveway would be located on. So placing the driveway on the opposite side of the property, obviously that would require a fairly substantial change to the plans for the home, because the driveway's placement would be related to the placement of the garage, the integral garage, or a parking space in the front. We went through a number of revisions with the proponent, and we weren't able to find anything that they weren't able to submit anything to us that would ensure the tree's preservation and continued health. And that's consistent with our original assessment during the Committee of Adjustment application, where despite the tree being shown on the plans as being retained, we identified it as a likely removal, and our comment was based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for staff? No? Oh, speakers? I see Councillor Robinson, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Robinson?
Does Councillor Carroll want to go first? It doesn't matter to me.
Well, I was just going to offer to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you. She's done that. So I would also just speak for 1 minute and say I'm very impressed that Councillor Carroll picked up on that COA piece. It's really great to see that she paid attention to that detail, because this is a little odd that this is coming before us, simply because preserving the tree was a condition of the approval by COA. So It's just odd that this is even permitted to come before this body, given that's the background. So thank you to Councillor Carroll for identifying that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other speakers on the item? No? Okay. Councillor Carroll is moving staff recommendations. Yeah. All those in favor? I think it's unanimous. Yeah. Okay. That carries. Just before we go to the last item, which is 2716, application to remove a private tree, 8 Leacock, I would like to, on behalf of North York Community Council, I would like to welcome David Sitt as our new Director of Planning in North York. I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone when I say we look forward very much to working with you on many of the files. I have said repeatedly that the inner suburbs, particularly North York, are the new frontier of development in the city. And we have a lot of work ahead of us to make sure we have responsible development and plans that meet the local needs. So I think you're a very brave person for taking this job on, and I welcome you. I welcome you to North York, and I assure you, you will never be bored.
Thank you, everybody.
Hazing, Mr. Chair. When do we get to do the hazing?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you if you want to have a word or two.
Thank you, members of council. I certainly look forward to working with all of you and the great team here at in city planning in North York. So certainly looking forward to the challenge and the opportunity. And I will be reaching out and meeting with each of you individually in the near future as well. Thank you.
Great. Well, I look forward to working with you. I believe I have about 700 acres of vacant land in Ward 6, so we've got a lot of work to do over the years. Final item on the agenda, item 2716, tree removal application. We do have 2 deputants on the item, Karen Mack. Ms. Mack, are you on the line?
To the chair, that speaker was connected earlier, but they are no longer connected to the meeting.
Okay. Dimitri Paraklita.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, that's myself. My wife and partner, Karen Mack, is with me on the same.
Oh, you're on the same call.
Computer.
Okay. Are you
right.
Are you the owners of 8 Leacock, or what's your...
We're both the owners. We're both the owners of 8 Leacock.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Would it be possible to show some visuals of the property and the tree in question?
You could... Oh, they don't have access. Okay, I was just going to say you could, but I'm getting a note here from the clerk that you wouldn't have access. We do have the file here in front of us, and I believe this is your tree.
It's a bit hard to read, but it looks vaguely, from an oblique, it looks about right, yes.
Okay. So you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair and Council. So my partner Karen and I were both architects. We live in North York. We practice. Our offices Avenue and Lawrence area. And the issue with the tree is we've been in this property for about 11 years. And over those 11 years, unfortunately, we actually love the tree, and we're not taking this decision or request lightly. I actually lost a bit of sleep over it on the weekend, and I spoke to a representative from forestry last week. We had a 20-30 minute session where we actually looked at, the situation with the tree, any possible ways of saving the tree. And over the weekend, Karen and I, we put together our thoughts, and we're still weighing in favor of removal. And the reason is, over the last 11 years that we own the property, the trees actually caused significant damage. It's right on the edge of the driveway. And because this is silver maple, so the root system has actually been pushing up the driveway. it's actually extended into the garage. So our driveway has cracks that are up to 8 inches in width and about sometimes longer than 3 meters. They've extended into the garage, and the slab is extensively cracked due to the tree root system. We've spent over $13,000 repairing the damage to the sewage system over the years. We've had to replace a garage door because of a large branch over 10 centimeters diameter that's collapsed on the garage. We've had damage to the car from collapsing branches from the tree, and there are significant overhanging branches over the house itself. We annually try and trim those back as much as we can. In the last iteration, the arborist told us that any further trimming will definitely affect the health of the tree. So we're sort of in this situation where essentially we love the tree, but it's been very difficult to kind of with all the property damage that we've endured, and also the driveway damage that's ongoing, we've not been able to fix that. We've spoken to a few landscapers, to a few arborists. The other problem is, even after a consultation with the city forestry last week, that we have a delta of about 8 inches in height between the top of the tree branches and some of the lower portions that are basically creating ponding and quite dangerous in the winter. We can't regrade the driveway because of the way the tree branches are kind of over 10 inches above the top of the driveway at the lowest, the garage at the lowest point. So regrading is not really an option, because then we would create a situation where the water from a heavy rainfall or any rainfall would be flowing back into the garage and vis-a-vis into the house. So it's a bit of a difficult situation. So we're basically asking that the city review the consideration for the tree, and essentially help us to sort of solve the problem that we've been having over the last 11 years.
All right, well, thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? No? Councillor Robinson? No, you're good? Any others? Question for staff? If not, we'll go to speakers. And Councillor Robinson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to refer this back to staff to work with the applicant. I know this is a lovely family, Karen and Dimitri, and they're always well-intended. They're great neighbors, and I understand perfectly what they're going through. Having said that, I think we need a bit more information around this and to look at other options. I will just tell you, Karen and Dimitri, and my colleagues will back me up here. No matter what we do here, City Council will, let's say we decided to remove the tree, City Council will overturn that. There's a clear-cut pattern with City Council doing that. The items are always held and voted on. So we don't have complete jurisdiction as North York Community Council councillors. That's a mouthful, 3 C's, alliteration. But this lands actually before City Council tree removals. So my feeling is the best way to address this is to refer it back to staff, to work with the applicant on all options. And if that's doesn't resolve things, then we can bring it back to this body for further review. So that's my proposal.
That was a very cute dog you had sitting there who seemed to be listening very intently. So thank you, Councillor Rob.
Councillor Filion also has a dog that was in the tile. Very cute dog.
Very nice. Any other speakers on the item? So if we could put that on the screen, we're going to refer back to staff for more work, a second sober look, massive trimming, look at other solutions to save the tree. So refer back to Director, Urban Forestry, Parks, Forestry and Recreation. Just do a slight edit there. Forestry appears twice, and recreation for further investigation. So we'll make that edit. All those in favor of referral? Back? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that includes, except for the bills that.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I was for. I put my hand up a bit slowly, so I was for that.
Yeah, it was not a recorded vote, but referral carries. And Councillor Robinson, you were noted in the affirmative. Let's do the bills.
Mr. Chair, will you have quorum to adopt the bills if I hop on to my next meeting?
Yes, we will have quorum to do the bills.
I really appreciate it, colleagues. I got to join this other meeting.
Fully understood. Okay, take care. Councillor Fillion. Councillor Fillion, would you
That
like?
the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 27 on October 13, 2021.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And the confirming bill? Councillor Cole?
Move that the North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 804 to 808 prepared for the October 13th, 2021 meeting 27 of the Community Council.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That conducts our business for today. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, deputants and members of the public. Thank you, clerk staff. And thank you to the IT people for keeping us going. Enjoy what's left of the week, and we'll see you soon.